whole team from the elementary, and you see social distancing and the wearing of masks and lots of helpers from teachers to staff. Um, let's go to secondary, and you'll see the same thing, but you'll see Jen Shealy, and I will tell you, board members, that our students, of course, our staff is amazing, but our students have really complied with all the rules, as anathema as it is. They're really doing a great job so far. So I'm just so happy, and I thank our parents and our students for that.
That's excellent.
Okay, so that takes us to school update, and I'd like to share a few slides with you, and then I'd like to stop and ask your opinion on a couple of things. So usually, if you go to the next slide, I usually put all the things I'm going to talk about, and I say a couple words about each of these. And I want to stop when we get to the new health department guidelines and talk and ask you specifically about them, because new guidelines just came out yesterday. So first, let me mention the COVID update and the Chester County metrics. So if you look at the incident rate there from last week, it was 85.05. And the percentage was still only 4.8, and of course it's over 10 that there's a concern, but the 85 is we're over 80, so we're up there. And actually this week it has already surpassed 100, so they're anticipating that our post-Halloween surge is now upon us. So I think for the next couple of weeks it will definitely go up, at least that's what's projected. So let me come back to that in just a minute. If you go back to the main slide there, and I just wanted to update you on our positive COVID cases and quarantine. So positive COVID cases are 13 at this point. Quarantine is 121, but again, that's because a large number were a football team and now a volleyball team. So when one person on the athletic team tests positive, then that creates quite a few quarantining situations. But positive, those have been independent in different schools, and we have not seen evidence of transmission in schools. So that's a good thing. But I'd like to just keep providing those numbers so you have them. Okay, next is the health department guidelines, and they've been working on these for the last couple of weeks. And actually, it's surprisingly, it's been the State Department, our local department, and CHOP has all been involved. And I mentioned that we were expecting these guidelines last week, and they came out just yesterday. But if you look at this slide, it says new guidance at the top. But the last paragraph there, the last bullet point, I should say, the very last line says, transitioning to a more virtual instructional model can be considered when thresholds for incidence rates and positivity are met for 3 consecutive weeks. So remember that over 80, we're over 80, but in the past they had a 2 there, and they were saying they were either going to be 3 or 4 weeks. So they settled in on 3, but what that does is last Friday would have been the first week. It'll be this Friday, next Friday. We go to school that Monday, half-day Monday, and then we have parent conferences. So I believe with that idea of 3 to 4 weeks, it will take us to Thanksgiving. If you go to the next slide, they also gave us, oh, I'm sorry, it's 2 slides away, but let me do this next slide too, and I'll come back to that, that 3-week piece. They also said in the new guidance, these thresholds serve as guidance for instructional models and must be considered along with additional information such as the number of COVID cases and/or outbreaks, evidence of transmission within schools, staffing levels, adherence to preventative measures, etc. In combination with the thresholds, the additional information is used to assess the best course of action related to instructional models. So the new guidance says that you don't just look at the number. You look at the number, which we're above 80 now, and then you look at evidence of transmission, outbreaks, those kinds of things in consultation with the health department. So that, I believe, that gives us a little leeway. Then they put some rationale, and I believe this is in the next slide. So 2 pieces, there's more, but I pulled out the 2 pieces that had to do with instruction. So transitioning to a virtual model is considered if there's 3 weeks of high community transmission. But the rationale, the review of the data, both at the county and local levels, indicates that at least 3 to 4 weeks are needed to see how incidence and positivity will trend, upward, downward, or stable. So they're in that 3 to 4 weeks. That's why I believe we could probably go with confidence. We can let parents know that K-12, we should be able to stay in school till Thanksgiving. The next thing they said about instruction was the guidance provides regarding additional information used when considering transitioning to a different instructional model. And here, the thresholds serve as the foundation for monitoring when to assess the need for transitioning between models. Additional information specific to schools is important. For example, there may be times when the community transmission is high, like we are now. However, the transmission within schools is low, like we are now. So in such cases, it may not be necessary to transition to a more virtual model. So that's letting us know that that we can, even as long as we don't have outbreaks and in-school transmission, we should be able to stay in our staggered model. All right, the third thing that the guidance says is this: when transitioning to a more virtual-based instructional model, it is recommended that the transition be a phased transition with older grades first, followed by younger grades. Remember, we started the opposite. We brought in elementary. So I'm thinking that if we did have to close, we would go high school, middle school, elementary. But actually, at this point, if you go to the next slide, they're the biggest pieces of the new health department updates, but they're pretty significant because before it said, just look at the numbers, which I kept saying, we're watching the numbers. Now it's saying, look at the numbers and then consult with the department on transmission in individual schools and the number and the amount of spread or in the individual schools. So board members, I want to say that I think what we can do is I believe we can stay the course like we are right now, certainly through Thanksgiving, and I even think beyond Thanksgiving. If the numbers are high, I'm thinking that we can stay in our staggered model, and if we begin to have spread in a given school or outbreaks, we'll be in constant consultation with the department. And if it's too many cases that they can't trace, they'll say close down that school. So I'm more inclined to recommend to you that we stay open. I mean, we're a big place, and that we close down an individual school for 2 weeks if the department tells us to. Now, I know there's been some new information out of CHOP that's suggesting everybody go virtual. Obviously if the governor or the Department of Education says we go virtual, we have to listen. But short of that, I'd like us to stay in this model if we can and just look at individual by individual schools, and if we have to close that school, we do that for 14 days. I think it'll be hard for parents of elementary students, because we might have to close quickly for those 14 days, and then that's childcare issues and all of that. So this is not without hardship for people, I understand that. But I think it would still allow us to keep the most amount of students in school. So I want to stop there, and there's a few things I want to talk about on the other side, but let me just stop there and ask the board for your thoughts. Do you think that's a good plan? Would you prefer we do something different? We'll use that as the guide.
Dr. Lenardi, could you put the slide up that had the other things to consider besides the numbers? No. Yes, that one. So, staffing levels.
That's a great point. What's your question?
So when we think about, teachers who may be out on leave, is that what we're talking about? Whether or not we can get subs in to take over classes for teachers who are absent? Is that what that's about?
Yeah, this actually means that if we have staff that are positive, or more likely what's happening for us around the district is the staff might have a spouse who tests positive, then the spouse who's our teacher has to quarantine. That has happened already in a couple cases. We've had a couple cases where a student comes home from college and they test positive. Now our teacher, who maybe is the parent, has to stay home. So those kinds of things, it's talking about that. Now it may be the case if we have too many staff that happens to, and we can't get subs, we very well could have a school closed for a period of time because we just don't have personnel. That's a very real fear.
We've had just in Chester County here, one school recently in another district that had to close because there were 14 teachers exposed to a teacher who came down with the virus, and with all 14 teachers out, they couldn't open the school. So that is a risk of this. The same with, and I saw on their transportation, very concerned about bus drivers. I know another district wasn't able to open this week because so many bus drivers have decided that it's too dangerous for them to drive buses. So I just would like the public to understand that there are many variables involved in this. It's not a stay open, stay closed, strictly based on one factor. So it is tough. It's very tough, the conflicting information out there. And, what's best for students. We all know that having our children in school is probably the best way to educate most of our students. It's just a pandemic. I hope we never have to go through anything like this again, but, maybe we'll be better prepared. I don't know.
What I hear Dr. Lenardi saying is we would monitor school by school, and if a school needed to close, we would do that.
Correct.
That's what I'm thinking.
Rather than shutting down the entire district.
And again, we wouldn't make that unilateral decision. That would be in combination with the health department, who's trying to contact trace, and when they say, okay, uncle, we can't trace it, the spread is happening in school, they would say the best thing to do is close down, and they would be correct. We should close down at that point.
Anyone else have any comments or questions or thoughts? Are you comfortable with this position?
I'm comfortable with it. I think we're a big district. We have many schools, and we just can't be a one-size-fits-all on if there's a problem here. And I really would hate to take it away from the kids. I mean, I have 2 kids in the district, and I know a lot of other parents that have expressed the kids going back, the change in attitude. It's amazing. And if it's not warranted, obviously there are scenarios where it would be warranted, but if it's not warranted, I say we stay as open as we possibly can.
I just think it's important to remember that we continue to do the things that we're doing, which is why I would like to think schools in the area are able to stay open, wearing the mask, keeping the social distancing, and following the procedures that we've set up. I guess I would like to go around the room. I don't want anyone to feel like they didn't have the opportunity to say. Director Blust, is your thoughts on this?
I'm comfortable with that now, but at any moment, with more information from the state, I'd like us to be able to be in communication and make a different decision.
I didn't hear that.
That she's comfortable with the decision now, but would like to keep monitoring the situation.
It is fluid. It is definitely fluid. I hear you.
It would have to be.
Director Wisdom?
I'm comfortable with this plan. We gotta go with the flow and make it up as we go along a little bit and listen to the information.
And, yeah.
This, I'm good. I'm fine with this.
I'm comfortable with the plan. I've heard from so many families that their students are happy and doing better since they've been in school. I like having that option for parents, and I've seen it with my own child, that he is so much happier going in. I understand, the parents who have been frustrated and who are finally seeing their kids engaged more, and so I am comfortable with this plan.
I would like us, if possible, to, I know people don't, I know they don't want 100 surveys, but if we could find out from the adults in our buildings, what are we doing right? What can we do better? Is there something that they have a concern about, just so that we're ensuring that our staff does feel safe?
I think
And
that's a
that we
great
are
idea.
following all the protocols that we've put forth. I don't know, as a board member, I have not been in any of the buildings lately. I didn't know if any, when kids speak to what the buildings look like and how it's being received. I see the kids in the neighborhood, they're thrilled to be back.
So board members shouldn't be in buildings right now. In fact, no visitors should be in. We're trying to limit it. We're very careful ourselves. And that was sort of the point of the videos, just to give you a sense of what it looks like. But the kids, I will tell you, the kids, they're wonderful so far. I mean, they're following the rules. And here's what I think. If they know that if they do the right things, and even when they're outside, that they do the right things, and they're not gathering and doing that kind of business, teachers and kids, their building stays open. I think that might be motivation to remind everybody, this is our house. Let's do it right.
Well, I just want to make sure the staff feels that also, and that's why I'm asking, what the feeling is among our staff in the individual buildings, because I know, they have concerns just like we do. And, the more comfortable they are in it, the better able we're going to be able to stay open.
Yeah. So maybe we let high school get a few more days in, and then we send something out like that and just get some feedback. That's a good idea.
So, elementary's been at it for a couple of weeks, so we can start with them and see where they are, and then
Sure, we could do that too.
give them some time.
Um,
Director Grad?
I'm definitely fine, with continuing along this trend. Just again, making sure that we keep science and data as we have them as a forefront of our decision, and safety, because that has always been our main motivator. I would like to try to think of some way that we can make any transition easier for our staff, students, and parents. I know that's going to be really challenging, but anything we can do to help them with that would certainly be beneficial to everybody.
Director McNeil, Dr. McNeil, are you comfortable? I know.
Yeah,
You asked some
I
questions.
am all for keeping the kids in school, as Director Kring mentioned. My grandchildren are thrilled to be back in school. And looking at that video, Dr. Lenardi, it seems to me that everybody is adhering to preventative measures, and that's the key. I know there is a sub-issue. So, the way I look at that is it should be all hands on deck, whoever needs to be helping teachers with classes and getting sub-coverage. And I know you said that you're being careful with your own team here, but there was a point when central administration did go in, and not during a pandemic, and substitute. And these are extraordinary times, and I think that having this group here, the people who lead the ship, to see those faces in buildings and actually rolling up their sleeves and getting down to the work with the people who are in the trenches would go a long way. I'm not employed through STS, or I would volunteer my services as well. I just think the teachers need to know that we are so supportive of what they're trying to do to keep our children in school. that we need to walk the walk and talk the talk. So, yeah.
We have two board members that are Zooming, so Director Gibson?
Yes, I do support the students staying in school and going by a school basis. I do not believe that we should be making decisions for schools like West Bradford based on what's happening in Euclid Hills. That makes a very difficult situation in a district as large as ours. So I would like to see the students remain in school.
Thank you. Vice President Britton?
I just wanted to remind the community that while I am supportive of allowing students and families to have choice and go to school if they want to, the converse is also true if you are uncomfortable with the numbers and you're following along with Chester County Health Department and you feel the risks are too high for you and your family. You have the right to keep your children home. They can Zoom into class. And I think the more families that take this kind of initiative, the safer everybody will be. Thank you.
You want to move on with your?
Okay,
Thank you,
so,
Dr. Leonardi.
yeah, thank you for that, board members. And I don't know what's going to happen across Chester County. Some of the schools are talking about closing their high schools, like doing that backward, high schools, middle schools, elementary. I don't know if they will or not. I know the new information that came out of CHOP kind of spun around because it's making some recommendation that we generally don't follow CHOP, we follow the health department. So I think we're in line continuing to follow the health department, but there's a lot of buzz out there about what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. So we'll stay this course, and I'll just keep you informed on what happens on my end and what I hear from the state or anyone else, but that'll be our plan going forward.
Do we have any more information about transportation?
Yeah,
I know
yeah, I'm not,
oh,
yeah. if
you're
you-
not done.
Yeah,
Okay,
go to the
great.
next slide. Yeah, there's a couple things on the other end. That was really the big thing I wanted to just talk about out loud. But if you go to the other side, under winter sports, I'm going to jump through this really quickly. But winter sports, they've met. Chesmont is putting together, I guess, their final plan. But basically, this is exactly what you saw from the fall, and that is spectators will get 2 tickets. And we'll follow the governor's orders, of course, with gathering restrictions for our winter sports. If you go to the next slide, it says we do this whole pre-screening thing for winter sports, and we do that every day and before contests. So we'll continue with that. We've done that ever since the summer, and it's really hard to do, but the athletic directors and coaches have been amazing. Then the next slide is, again, you've seen all this before, the travel quarantine recommendations. We're asking people if they go to outside places that are on the quarantine list, then you're quarantined for 14 days from your athletic team. No concessions, admissions not charged. The competition schedules, you've seen it, board members, but I'll show you again in a minute. And then transportation, we do allow parents to drive their student if they want to. Normally we discourage that, but this year we're encouraging it. And if you go to the next slide, this is the schedule, and you've seen this before, but this is the plan. So if we're good to go and our schools are open, we'll go with this abbreviated winter plan. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then if you go back to the next slide, Kevin, the next thing on here is transportation, and Mr. Mattis has been working day and night with transportation, so why don't you provide that update, sir?
Sure. Currently, we are short 42 bus drivers around the district, 27 at Kraft, 15 at Wolfington. Everybody that has a school bus driver's license is out driving. I'm talking about mechanics, bus driver trainers, office staff. The owners of the companies are out driving buses just to try to keep it together for us. So we appreciate their efforts very much. Our bus companies are actively recruiting drivers. They're increasing the hourly wages. They're creating sign-on bonuses. So all those kind of efforts are happening to recruit drivers and retain drivers. So if you know anybody that's looking for a job, I have them call Kraft, Wolfington, or On the Go Kids. So they're certainly to get hired with some training, and training is the key. Our transportation department has done a wonderful job managing the driver shortage. They've been combining bus runs. Thankfully, we're on a staggered schedule, so our bus loads are less than 50% of capacity where they normally would be. So we're targeting certain bus runs to combine them together. We have certain buses that are actually doing 2 bus runs. They're doing double the work. So they're dropping off 2 loads of students at an elementary school in the morning and taking 2 loads of elementary students at home at night to try to make up for the differences that we have. And to try, we have a gap of 12 buses that we have to cover for. So we have to do that at the secondary level. We have to combine bus runs and do duplicate bus runs. And the same thing at the elementary level, so that we can fully eliminate 1 bus out of our fleet, so to speak, to cover for the lack of bus drivers. So they've been working so hard, and we just found out Friday that we had to fill nine bus drivers that were not going to show up for work on Monday. So they worked all weekend to try to keep it together as best they can. So they've been doing amazing work. And again, one of our agenda items tonight is to add 3 buses to our fleet. So that will help us fill our immediate needs, our gap currently. But when we get to a full complement of bus drivers, eventually, we get back to full strength, that will reduce our bus ride times, primarily at our Marsh Creek 6th grade center is where we'd like to target that. But for now, we just need people, we need drivers to keep us moving.
Thank you. Mr. Mattis, do we need more help in transportation short-term, and do we have a system in place? I know one of our board members tonight was late because their children were late with buses, obviously, I would assume because of the double runs, where we're notifying parents when buses are going to be late and making them aware. I know sometimes it's going to be short notice. So I've been in the situation, and years ago it was far worse because the offices closed at 4, so you didn't even have anyone to call. But are we able to be a little more proactive and let parents know ahead of time? It's 4:15 and your child is still at school because we're waiting for a bus to bring them home?
We are. We have a product called Blackboard where we can target parents on a specific bus. So, secondary students on bus number 1, they get an email blast knowing that there is an issue, maybe the bus broke down or whatever it might be. So we do have that as a tool. Right now, with all the fluidity that's going on, it's more difficult because we have multiple buses being late. It's the first couple weeks of school. It's always the case, but right now it's really more challenging.
But just to answer phones, to let them know from 4 to 6.
And we've been doing that. And
Okay.
during the day, we actually have bus drivers that are off duty during the midday, coming in and helping us answer emails, returning phone calls, doing the communication part of it so that our transportation experts can fix the problems, fix the routing problems, the bus stop problems, keep them off the telephone so that they can get the work done.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Can you just speak to who the primary contact person is or department is if parents do have trouble with their transportation, like if the buses are coming early, if they're showing up late, who do they reach out to?
There's a ticket system on our website under our transportation department that they can email through. There's also a phone number there. So our website contains all that information for them to reach out to us, and we'll get back to them. We assign numbers, and it's first in, first out, that type of order.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I was debating which was the better place to bring these concerns to our attention now or when we are approving the bus contracts or not. But we made a point of mentioning how important it is to adhere to preventative measures in our schools. And I'm concerned that maybe, and it may be a single incident or not, but it was brought to my attention and I felt it imperative that I bring it to your attention, that children are being allowed on buses without masks, on a bus without masks. make the singular because that's the specific evidence I have. The bus is not being loaded from back to front. There are no assigned seats, and the windows were not cracked open. So I guess my question is, I heard you say that the owners are driving buses, et cetera, et cetera. So who is monitoring the adherence to these safety protocols so that parents can feel comfortable when they put their child on a bus?
Well, this is very good feedback, because as we find out these things, we can look at the bus videos, see what's happening, and actually use that as a training tool for our bus drivers. You know, obviously, we have a lot of new bus drivers that are unfamiliar with the routes, unfamiliar with where to park to pick up students at the high schools and middle schools at the end of the day. You know, that's staging, and so it creates dismissal issues. So it's helpful to know that, because you're absolutely right. We can crack the bus windows, even when it's raining out. Just an inch is great, airflow. Masks, we have a supply of masks on the bus. So if a student forgets their mask, the driver can hand them a mask, they put it on. Now, we may have certain students that are exempt from wearing a mask. You know, they may have medical issues. You know, they may have special needs. So there may be an isolated case where that may be the situation, but for the most part, everybody should have a mask on all the time.
But certainly, like the teachers, we said the teachers were getting a list of those children. I'm assuming a bus driver would have a list of those students as well.
Yes, but do they have it on the first day of school? That might be stretching it a bit, to be
So
honest
are
with
the bus companies training their bus drivers? Okay, so here are the things you need to do on your bus, because you're right, a new bus driver, a sub-bus driver, they only know what they're being told. They're coming into a very compromising situation, so we appreciate what they're doing, but it's incumbent upon the leadership in the bus company to communicate with these folks. And,
Yes.
I mean, all it takes is a one-page sheet to give each driver to check it off each time.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And we communicated to the bus companies today when we found out that, you know, had some feedback on that, called them up and say, you know, talk to their head trainers. Listen, make sure, you know, you have a driver team meeting in the morning. You know, drivers come in early. Just takes 5 minutes. Just remember to do X, Y, and Z every day, you know. We're wiping down the buses, deep cleaning at the end of the days, so cleaning in between bus runs. So that is happening. That has been drilled into them. But overall, I think we're doing very well considering what we're up against. But
So
can do better.
we can expect that parents will see an improvement in this particular bus run because we've communicated this already to our bus company.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what you described, Dr. McNeil, is unacceptable. They
Yes.
should be in their seats, they should be following all the rules. That's critical if we're going to stay open. So anytime you hear that, bus number, elementary or secondary, and we will immediately follow up.
I so appreciate that, Dr. Lenardi, because I know the team is working very hard. We all are working hard to keep kids in school. Parents are focused on that as well. I just wanted to ask one other question. Are bus drivers' temperatures taken before they take a bus? Like, what's the protocol for them as well? I know what it is for our own district for employees. Can we find that out? And I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm kind of asking you that
Yeah,
off
I
the
can
cuff.
find
If you
that out,
could
'cause I
find
do
that
not
out
know
and
the
let us
answer.
know,
Yes.
so that we can let folks know. Thank you.
Anything else for transportation?
I was wondering about the drivers not wearing a mask while they're driving. What was the reasoning behind that?
We allow I'll call a modification, because if a driver is wearing glasses and it's a humid day like today, when it's raining out, sometimes they may need to drop their mask down below their below their nose, so that their glasses don't fog up. So when the students are getting on the bus, you know, we want the mask fully covering the face, but as they're driving and they're having problems with their glasses fogging up, then we allow them to drop it down below their nose a little bit to help prevent that from happening, because it's a safety issue.
So generally, they're wearing their masks if they
Yes,
can, and
yes.
when they're loading and unloading. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so a bus should never go by you where you don't see a mask. So you could see it this way or you could see it this way, but you should see a mask. Yeah.
And I can speak from experience that happens.
That's right. Okay, how about just a word about TCHS? I know there was some conversation about that. This is actually, we have 4 buses going to TCHS. Most of our kiddos go there in the afternoon, and so if it's on a day when they're in school, we shuttle them from either east or west. We then take them home, or if it's a day they're not, that they're virtual, then we pick them up and we get them there. So that's actually going very well. I said we had 4 buses. We also have a few special ed students that go in the morning. It's a little trickier. We take them to the school. We then have to shuttle them over to TCHS. But in all cases, that seems to be working out pretty well. Mr. Mattis, anything to add to that?
No, that's it. Before we started secondary schedules, we were able to do more customized schedules back and forth to school, to TCHS. But now that all our buses are fully engaged, we have to bring in all the students to the high schools
Right.
and then shuttle them over.
Right.
It's
but it
just
works. Yeah.
equipment problems.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then the last thing is food distribution. You know, we're giving out a lot of food, and we have a couple of issues here because of the weather. So I'd like to ask Mr. Lawver to comment on that.
As you know, this is a very popular program, and it's being operated at Downingtown East High School and at Downingtown West High School on Monday evenings. This program is going to continue during the entire school year, each one of those evenings. So we're trying to prepare now for the Airmark people to have some kind of shelter to work out of. Tonight, I'm glad it wasn't tonight with the pouring rain, because as it has been, the Downingtown East kitchen staff and the Airmark staff have to stand out in the Downingtown East driveway exactly opposite the rear kitchen door, which is in the alley behind the building. So I met with a vendor this week, and we're going to make some modifications for them in preparation for inclement weather and very cold weather. So we'll be setting them up a shed there. They wanted 3 distribution points. This is a drive-up service. No one gets out of their car. They just drive up, roll their window down. They hand them a bag of meals or open their trunk, and they'll put the bag of meals in there for them. So the people that are actually distributing the food are the ones that are out in the weather. So we also don't want the lunches to freeze. So we're going to provide a shed there that'll have a distribution point at each end of it. They'll have a team working at one end and a team working at the other. The shed will run linearly at the opposite ends of it. And also we're going to kind of make a room in our boiler room that is right there on the alley with roll-up doors. We're going to use our art panels that we've been using in a lot of our schools and make a little room so when they put the door up, they're in a heated space there, and as they come up to pick up their meals, they can just step out and hand them the bag of meals, and then the people can keep driving. It's a very intense with a lot of traffic involved with this every time. There's hundreds and hundreds of cars coming up at each one of these locations each Monday night. So the idea is to keep it moving as fast as possible. In the proximity for where the meals are prepared to where they're distributed east is just across the driveway. At west, it's a little harder. Our maintenance crew is actually helping out with that. We use our big box truck that we use to shuffle furniture, materials, whatever we have to around the district. We pick up the meals at the kitchen, and then we take them up to the opposite end, the west end of the building, which is the end that faces Rock Raymond Road. There's a canopy that goes across the sidewalk there. The cars come in the Manor Avenue entrance of Downingtown West, drive around the building, come across that canopy, and then exit out on Rock Raymond Road. It's been great for them for rainy days and things like that, but soon they're going to be in the cold too. So I'm meeting with the vendor tomorrow actually to see if we can do something similar to what we did for the IT staff and the exchange of computers with a tent sides. I'm going to see if we can attach sides to that canopy so that protect them from the wind and the blowing rain. And in both these locations, we'll probably provide either some type of propane heater as we're doing with the IT computer exchange too. So they're in there, they have a little bit of heat while they're doing this. It's a 2-hour program each night. It's going to get cold. They're going to need some protection, and this will definitely help them out a lot with that.
So that completes the updates. Any questions?
Yes. Who is manning that program? Is it Aramark?
How many?
Who is manning that program? Who are the workers?
It varies every week.
It's Aramark.
It's Aramark.
Yeah,
Aramark staff.
lots, yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
Have there been any traffic issues on like the surrounding roads?
No, that's what we've been monitoring that.
That's good.
Actually, Tim Hubbard helps us with security, and our connection with each police department at Euclid and with the borough has been monitoring that, and we've kept them from backing up in the driveways, because Aramark will have 4 people usually out there handing out meals. As one car drives up, they're already waiting for the next car with their meals, and it moves very, very fast. So the hardest thing for the West Campus is that we have to truck the meals up to the opposite end of the campus. At East, we just roll them on carts across the driveway, and they're right there. So it's load the truck, take them all up, and sometimes come back, load the truck again, take another whole load up to the west end, and they distribute them from there.
Sounds very smooth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that, oh, sorry.
So we had talked about sending a survey to staff. I think that's an important consideration, to think about how we think things are going from a staff perspective and what we're doing. Subs seem to be a big issue, and who's being called for subs. The dual platform, and I know we think it will get easier. I'm not so sure it's going to get easier or not, but maybe we have some suggestions from the people in the field as to how that might improve. And then maybe there would be space for other, are there other things that haven't been asked that might be helpful? It's just, we're here, we're not in the schools, the principals are there with their teachers. It's easy for us to understand intellectually, but I think it's very important that we hear from the people in the field. Videos are nice, it gives you a nice sense of what's going on, it's great, but what are the people who are in the trenches thinking about how maybe we can make things better so that we can stay in school longer?
I totally agree. The people need to be heard, need to felt that they are being listened to.
So and I agree.
The
And
survey
I
would work.
think it's really basically 2 questions. What are we doing right, and what can we do better?
Perfect.
Because it can't be
Complaint.
just a gripe session.
Understood.
If you're gonna point out an issue and a problem, we may never be able to do the solution you have, but we need suggestions on how it's gonna change, because this situation is this situation. It's not going anywhere. So, to your point about the dual platforms, and I understand the difficulty. I don't understand the difficulty because I'm not doing it, but I can imagine the difficulty. So I correct myself there. Is there a way for us to make it a little saner, a little easier? I really, those are the 2 questions for me. What are we doing well, and what can we do better? And it may be different for buildings. It may be something that we're missing in one that is working well in one building and not in another, and if we team them together, we could say, you know what, this school's doing it this way, let's try that. So
that's a good
I don't
point.
want it to be a 12-page survey, because, that's not going to be helpful either. So that when I suggested asking, those are the 2 questions I was looking for.
And I think we can trust teachers to answer succinctly. After all, they don't have the hours of time that we might have to answer a survey.
Right.
And nobody likes surveys where you have to fill in a text box. Everybody likes boxes that you have to check off because it's quicker. But who better than the people in the trenches to be giving us feedback on what's going right and what we might do better? And I think it would go a long way to making people feeling appreciated and help what is probably a very stressful time in their lives, professionally and personally.
Agreed.
Okay, any other,
Okay, so that's
Director-
the end of the school,
Hold on.
oh, I'm sorry.
Just real quick, I mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to go out, publicly, that we also do need to really think about content and what we're teaching and how we're presenting it to our students to make sure that we're not overwhelming them and our teachers. We all learned about trauma-informed teaching. Everybody here is in a trauma setting right now due to the pandemic, and we shouldn't be teaching the same way that we taught in a non-pandemic. And I know that you had spoken to that a little bit, and just like to move forward with that.
I'm sorry, President Bertoni, there was one more thing that I wanted to mention. It has to do with the pandemic. It doesn't really have anything to do with what was presented, but there are groups of students that we have in our schools 4 days a week. Some of our special education students and our ELLs, our ELLs, our English language learners. So I wondered about our homeless students. I don't know how many we have in our district. I know historically we haven't had that many, but I worried about those. I've been thinking about those children and where they might be housed. Is it in a car? I mean, I don't know. Do they have access to technology? Are they getting meals? Do they have a car where they could pull up and get this free food that's being offered? And I just thought, if possible, could we get, and I don't know. I don't know if we are not, but I haven't heard it mentioned, so that's why I'm bringing it up. Can we get them in school 4 days a week so that we're sure that these children are cared for during the hours that they're in school, at least? So I don't know if we thought of it, we're doing it, or where we are with it.
Right. That's an excellent question. I know you probably have some answers here, but maybe just numbers-wise, if you could give that to us, so we're familiar with,
Hopefully you can hear me. You're supposed to hear me. So we have over 20 students at this point in time that are experiencing homelessness in the district.
How many did you say, Mr.?
Over 20.
Over 20, okay.
Specific example in the board update on Friday. Our home and school visitor, Jamie Nunnery, works very closely with our students experiencing homelessness. Her and I have had several conversations since the start of the year, even last year during the closure, making sure that students do have access, problem-solving situations. We have funds set aside for families that maybe do need support with transportation, whether it's to pick up meals or for other services. So we're keeping a close eye on those students and continue to monitor them. In regards to the 4 days a week, we certainly set the limit at this point in time with our special education students, minus our speaking only, as well as our English language learner students. And really, the reason for that was to make sure that we're maintaining our health and safety plan and monitoring those expectations. We have a large number of special education students in the district, so maintaining those 6 feet distance, making sure that we weren't overtaxing the buildings was really important at the start of it. So we're monitoring those things. It's certainly fluid, as we kind of said throughout this meeting today, as we look at other students, but we are keeping a close eye on our students experiencing homelessness.
could you consider, and again, as you said, we want to keep with our safety plan, but I think the board would appreciate it, or certainly Dr. McNeil and I, if you would look at those students, because it is 20 students, which is not a small number, but we also have 17 buildings. So are they, and I don't know, you would know better, if possible, if there was a way, if a school can accept them 4 days, I think that would be great.
So you're saying what's holding us back are numbers?
So at the beginning, we certainly wanted to be
The big-
thoughtful about
Right.
who we were putting in. Some buildings are more crowded than others
Right.
in regards to
Depends where they go.
students coming in. The other piece to consider is we have to look at all those different subgroups and the equity of that, because we have lots of different subgroups in our district that all have different needs for various reasons. So we also want to make sure that we're being fair across the board to all of our students with different needs, and we're supporting those homeless students with the resources
So I think that's a conversation that we need to have then, because if there are other subgroups that I'm missing that would benefit from being in school, then I think we need that information. Not that all kids wouldn't benefit from being
I
in
was
school.
going to say, Dr. McNeil, it's just a slip, and I,
Yeah, you're right.
I certainly wouldn't mind having the conversation, but we really, there has to be an expectation also on the, I'm sure you have to look at how successful they're doing in school and some of those other issues to ensure that we're getting those students that need to be there. If we bring too many students back, then we're not following our safety protocols. So it's a balancing.
I'm missing that point. What do you mean how successful they're doing in school?
Well, I think we have to look at groups as a whole. We have to look at all our students and say who's going to benefit most by 4 days a week and how can we get them back 4 days a week? Because there are a number, I mean, any student's going to do well better 4 days a week.
So we have special education students in school because they have IEPs.
Right.
Why do we have Ls in school over some other groups?
I didn't hear
I
that.
don't understand the question. I think
So
you
why
have to
do we
look at the
choose
numbers that are in a
the
building.
ELLs over the other groups that are at risk? I think this is an important conversation.
I
how
do
we
think
make
it's
those
an important
decisions.
conversation, but at risk of what? I think that every case is individual and different. An ELL student is probably, I mean, the expectation is they're behind academically because they don't have a strong command of the English language.
I'm not asking for an explanation from you, Mrs. Bertoni. I'm looking for an explanation from administration, because if there are other subgroups that need to be considered, then we need to consider those children. And homeless children may not be eating if they're not in school.
Right.
So I don't know if that's the case with other subgroups or not. That's why I need the information. Thank you.
We can provide the information. You want us to bring it up at another meeting to talk about more? Or?
Yeah. Whatever information you can give us in the board update. It sounds to me like we are working on making sure that our homeless population is getting the food that's available. That's what I heard.
They don't have a car. They can't drive to the location where it is.
But they
Yeah,
are.
we don't know that. We don't know that.
But Jamie, what's her, I'm sorry.
No.
I'd rather have additional information and not have just opinions circulating
Well,
here.
but Mrs. Davis just said that Jamie Nunnery is working with them and supplying the things that they need.
I'll look for further information in the board
Thank you.
update. Thank you.
Okay, that completes the update piece for now. And the last piece of my superintendent's report, which is I think my longest ever in the history of superintendent's report, is we have a guest to talk about our demographic study. And as you know, we had a study done quite some time ago, and because of the pandemic, we were waiting to be in person. And so we're in person, but she is not. So we're going to go ahead and do it because we planned on it. So Mr. Mattis, would you please introduce our guest, and let's do that.
Okay, Tracy Healy is the owner of Future Think. She's been in the demographic and enrollment projection business for the past 25 years. She's worked with over 1,000 school districts across the country, and she's completed over 3,000 enrollment projections. She's with us tonight to give us an overview of our community and to give us some insight to where our students' enrollment might be heading in the near future. And thank you for joining us tonight, Ms. Healy. Please take it away.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mattis. It is my pleasure to be here tonight and talk a little bit about the enrollment projection report that we put together pre-pandemic. So it seems like a long time ago, but we'll go through that. I'm going to share my screen here real quick and see if I can. All right. Okay. So, Mr. Mattis did such a nice job introducing me that I won't do that. slide, but again, I'm just happy to be here. I am located in Columbus, Ohio, Dublin, just outside of there. Just to give you a little
Tracy, can you
perspective
go into
where I'm-
slideshow mode?
What's that? I'm sorry?
Can you go into slideshow mode?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
There we go. That would help. I did want to mention the Urban Decision Group. Rick Stein is not with us tonight, but they were partners on this project doing a lot of the geographic information system, all the mapping. That was part of this report, put together a mapping application showing where all the students live in the district and all the attributes associated with those students. In putting together an enrollment projection study, it's really important to kind of put it in the greater context as well. So we can take just a couple minutes to talk about some national, state, and county trends, just kind of zero, and then we'll zero in on the district itself. This map shows what is projected to happen with K-12 enrollment nationwide. And so we can see overall enrollment is projected to increase by 3%. Most of those increases are occurring in the southeast and the western part of the country. You know, where we are over here, northeast and eastern Midwest, we're expected to experience the most decline. So Pennsylvania overall is expected to decline by 7% over the next 10 years with K-12 public school enrollment. In terms of Chester County, we've seen a lot of increases since 2013. Population has increased by 12,500 residents for that period of time. Also important to note is that the population age 65 and over has also increased significantly by 18% since 2013 as well. So 16% of the population in Chester County is over the age of 65. About 10% of the residents were born outside of the U.S. that live in Chester County, and about 13% speak a language other than English at home. So just, kind of some things to be thinking about as we're talking how to serve students and how that may, differ as we've moved along over the last 7-8 years. In terms of educational attainment for those aged 25 and over, you can see that Chester County, far exceeds what we're seeing statewide and nationwide for bachelor's degree or higher, where over half of the county has at least a bachelor's degree, and only less than 6% have less than a high school diploma, compared to almost 12% nationwide. In terms of housing in the county, we've seen an increase of about 4% since 2013 in the number of housing units. The current median home value is $367,800, and median rent is about just under $1,300. Home value has increased by almost 15%, and the median rent has increased by about 9%. So again, just as we're looking at how things have transpired over a period of time, this next slide looks at the number of owner-occupied by borough and township, as well as the county, and then those households that are spending 30% or more of their income toward housing costs. You can see overall in the county, about 75% are owner-occupied, with 26% of the population spending more than 30% on housing. As we look at the all the townships exceed that. The Bureau, Downingtown is a little bit below that, and we're seeing, kind of where those housing costs fall from, anywhere from 21.1% up to 34.5%. Okay, so taking a look at what's happening in the district in terms of enrollment. Over the last 10 years, and again, since we did this, all this data is based on 2019-20 data, we've seen an increase of 11% over the last 10 years. So as we're looking at how students move grade to grade year by year, that's going to be a really important factor in determining the future enrollment projections. We look by our grade groupings. K-5 is up to just over 5,500 students. 6th grade is 1,050. 7th and 8th grades up 366 students at 2,233. And then the high school has had the greatest increase of 577 students over that 10-year period of time. Okay, another important factor in looking at enrollment is the number of birth counts. So what we've done is looked in the district, the number of births and how that has changed over time. We had a peak in 2006 at 900 births, and then it's, gone down to as low as 700 over, through 2018. So again, we look at births as an indicator of future kindergarten students. So, those that were born in 2014, for example, show up in kindergarten in roughly 2019-20 school year. So that was at our 803 number. Some general demographics, kind of talked about some of the population and housing, but again, kind of seeing how Chester County compares to Pennsylvania, certainly greater per capita income, median household income, and about half of the number of persons below poverty in terms as compared to Pennsylvania overall. And then again, we've seen increases in the borough and all of the townships from 2010 to 2017 estimates. We also looked at the school district as a whole based on census block groups. So kind of rolled that up and were able to get data from ESRI regarding what the population estimates were for 2019, as well as what they're projecting in terms of population for projections in 2024, so 5 years later. So they're projecting the total population of the district to increase by about 4% over the next 5 years. And then for the ages 0 through 18 by just under 1%. So again, this is the entire, all of those who live in the district, not just those who attend the public school district. Also looking at median age is expected to increase by about 2% or about 1 year over the next 5 years. In terms of income, looking at increases of 10 and 11% over the next 5 years for median and average household income. Average family size is currently 3.23, expected to just increase slightly over the next 5 years. And the number of family households is expected to increase by about 3%. So all of that information that I just kind of reviewed quickly is also mapped. So you can see, because of course it doesn't always grow equally across the district. So we wanted to show, here's kind of the boundary of the district. We work our way around, and you can see, every area is expected to increase except those kind of little small areas in that reddish orange color. That's the total population growth over the next 5 years. And then this is the school age population, so ages 5 through 18. And you can see, the areas in the darker light and darker green are areas of increasing, and then the yellow, orange, and reddish areas are projected to decline over that same period. And again, this is total, everyone aged 5 through 18, whether they attend the district or not. Here's just showing the median age as that increases, so you can see where these pockets of, some of the red are really outside the district, which is greater than 50, and then the dark green are areas of less than 40 as the median age. So you can kind of see how that changes over time, as well as the income. So there's just a very small area that's under 80,000, and everything is above that in terms of the median household income. Okay, we also look at housing in terms of what's happening regarding single-family building permits. And so we looked at that in the borough and each of the townships. We can see, kind of totals by year as well as totals by municipality. East Brandywine has had the most about new single family over the last 10 years at 919. We've seen the peak year was 318 overall, so that's last year in terms of the number of new homes. And then here's the breakdown of what's either under construction, approved, or in planning, sketch, preliminary, or final conditional use. So again, you can kind of see there's still a lot left that's currently, in one of these phases to be developed, across the board. And then again, this table is looking at the survival ratios. And what that is looking grade to grade, year to year, and what's happened for that. For example, like if we look at this K through 1 column, this measures the number of first graders this year, as opposed to those who were in kindergarten last year. So, last year we've gained 17.4% first graders from kindergarten to first grade. So every percentage that on average is greater than 100%, which is almost all of them, and 10 to 11 is right at 99, means you're gaining students year to year. So you have more students in a grade than you had in the previous grade the year before. And so this is really important in terms of looking at what's happening in enrollment. And then this birth to K column, remember the birth count chart that we looked at, this is measuring of those students born in the district, how many are showing up in the district 5 years later. So it's been, last 4 or 5 years between 90 and 100% of those born in the area that are showing up in the district. So based on all that information, we put together a set of enrollment projections. Had no idea when we did this what was going to happen in March, April, May, of this year. It's always tricky when I'm giving a presentation of projections when we've already started the next school year, because this number now, is never correct. This number is not probably, maybe it's close, maybe it's not so close. Because what we've seen is most districts across the country have experienced a decline in student enrollment because of the pandemic, anywhere between 5 and 15% on average. Some of the districts I've talked to, one growing district actually outside of Columbus, which is, they have about just under 20,000 students, so not, similar in size to, they lost 30% of their kindergartners this year, which has been by far the largest I've heard. I did a presentation last night for Williamsburg in Virginia, and their kindergarten was down 18% from last year. And they also, are a growing district. They're in similar size. They have 11,000 students in their district, and they have been growing. So again, overall, they lost about 5%, but predominantly, at the elementary school level. So anyway, in terms of, where we were before, the projections show an increase of 770 students over the 10-year period, or about 6%. Looking at K-5, up about 200 students, 6th grade up 69 students, 7th through 8th grade down a little bit, and that's really due to those low birth counts that we saw in those out years, and which is going to impact kindergarten in about 5 years, and then it's going to get, start circulating out to the middle school. So fairly flat for the 7th and 8th graders, and then up considerably again for the high school. I also looked at it based on a K4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 scenario, and kind of see how that breaks down a little bit. And then also compared it to what the State Department put together, and where they were last year in terms, they had projected a decline of 705 students over the next 10 years. When we look at that, you know, kind of where their actual versus projected was in enrollment, their projections overall were within 1%, which is really good. But where the biggest difference was at kindergarten, and they were 6% too low at kindergarten, and that can have a significant impact as we move forward. So that larger class size of 876, which was your actual, as those move through the grade, and since on average you've been picking up, not losing students, that number would continue to grow as we move forward. We also took a look at the free and reduced meal eligibility. It has increased of 1.6% over the last 6 years. It makes up roughly 11% of the total school population. We were asked to also kind of put some projections over the next 6 years for that, and see that projected to increase to about 11.5% over the next 6 years. And in doing this, I mean, it's a little tricky because, you know, there's so many variables related to this. What we really looked at was kind of what the percentage makeup was over the last 5 years, and then carried that forward over the next 5. So we see, you know, as a total of the population. So as your total population, student population increases, we projected the those eligible for free and reduced meals to increase as well. Also, we took a look at capacities, and so looking at what all the for the elementary school, what the building capacities are, what the current enrollment was, where they were as a percentage of capacity. And then this column, we looked at the 10th year of the projection and where we would be in terms of capacity. So, you know, overall, currently, you're at 97% capacity for each of the elementary schools. And then you can see that capacity is exceeded at 4 of the elementary schools. And then right at, you know, almost 100% for 2 of them. So that, since we're projecting enrollment to increase, of course, over the 10-year period, that only gets worse as we look at where you are in terms of capacity for the elementary school. This is based on the current configuration of K-5. We also looked at it if we move to a K-4 model and what that would do for capacity. So that would mean currently be right at 78.7% overall. All the schools are, you know, operating, under capacity. And then in the 10-year period, there would be 2 schools slightly over capacity, but everyone else would still be under, and there would be, you know, next flex capacity of over 1,000 students by moving 5th grade out. For the 6th grade school and the middle schools, we, you know, did the same thing. Currently, you know, in the 80s, great in terms of that, and really, you know, over that period of time, staying within that 80% range. We looked at, one of the tests was looking at, well, 5th grade's not at the elementary school, and we moved to a 2, 5, 6th grade buildings, what that would be. Currently, Marsh Creek is at 1250. We've seen the same if there was to be a new school building, and what that would do for the capacities there, and they would again be, you know, in that 80% range. At the high school level, currently, East is just over capacity by 19 students. West is right at 97%, and then the STEM Academy, and this capacity includes the recent addition, that's 74%. As we move forward, we see West coming over capacity as we've moved, some of those students from East and West into STEM as we move forward with the new addition. And then that's where we'd be in terms of high school, again, because we saw an increase of almost 600 students over the 10-year period projection. So that was it. So I threw a ton of information at you in a relatively short period of time. I'm happy to answer any questions, take any comments.
I had one question in the free and reduced lunch. You talked about an increase, and I was surprised with that because I feel as though some of our lower income areas are being bought up and renovated and turning into more expensive housing. So I expected it to be flat or go down. Do you look at that at all, or you're just basing it on percentages?
I mean, we definitely looked at housing in conjunction with everything else. And really because the district has been growing and has been growing at all the grade group levels, as those, students simply just move through the system, there's going to be an increase even if there was no new development, just because the kids already that are here today in the lower elementary grades are going to be here for that entire 10-year period. But additionally, as we looked at the housing, there is quite a bit of housing yet that's in the planning stages. So as we look at that, that also is an indicator to show that we would see an increase in the number of students as a result of some of that new housing. Again, it's not, a lot of times people think, oh gosh, for every new single family home, we're going to see at least 1 to 2 kids coming out. That's really not the case. The average is really closer for every 100 new single family homes. You can expect to see 40 to 50 kids coming out of that as a result of the lower family sizes, people waiting longer to get married, have children, et cetera. But it's still, there's still a significant amount of housing to be developed.
Did you take into consideration that, and I'm guessing you did, the numbers look pretty good, but that we tend to have more students moving in at the middle and high school level due to the homes that are being sold? Often they're the larger homes, so they're second homes for families.
Right. As we looked at the one chart, let me go back a little bit. Here, if we look at this again, we can see we're picking up the most number of kids, and really K-1 is the greatest, and that's typical, right? Because we have a lot of people who choose another option for full day kindergarten or kindergarten at a daycare center, and then they come in full, in first grade.
So
for a full day.
To that point, are these numbers based on half-day kindergarten, or do you consider full-day kindergarten in this?
They were broken out initially. The numbers that I have in the projection is just one number, and that was assuming full day.
Okay,
okay. So some of the capacity, that could, come down a little bit in terms of that with half day versus full day, but for the purposes of this report, we assumed all the children were full day.
But that may modify some of these numbers then if you're looking at half day at the start and then the jump in full day. I mean, because our kindergarten numbers should be more. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. It wouldn't impact this number at all because we measured them all the same. So whether they were a half-day kindergartner or a full-day kindergartner, we're measuring first grade based on all of it. So this number wouldn't change.
So going forward, the expectation is for an all-day kindergarten.
That was the expectation in terms of the projection, is to count all of the students as full day,
Okay,
rather than trying to break it out.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. McNeil?
Thank you, President Bertoni. So I wanted to ask, the first several slides that you presented painted a very rosy picture of Chester County and the Downingtown Area School District as affluent, upwardly mobile, median income increases, projecting an increase by 10%, very small areas under $80,000 median income in the year 2024. So I was just a little puzzled to see the slide that said that we're projecting an 11.5 increase in free and reduced lunch eligibility over the next 6 years. Can you speak to that,
Can that,
please?
I can find that slide for you.
I have it as slide 44, the free and reduced, but I don't know if it's the same as you have it numbered there.
Yeah, and what we did here is, so currently it's 11% of the total student population. So that's, based on the 2019-20 information. So what we did is looked at, okay, over the last, 5 years, what has that percentage been? And then we applied that average to the total population of the projection.
Okay,
So
I'm
because
just
your
looking.
population or your
I read your
student
slide
enrollment
wrong.
population is increasing, that increased also as a result.
I read your slide wrong, so
So-
I apologize. You projected an increase of 1.6%, and I was looking at the slide that said to increase to 11.5%, and I was looking at it as an 11.5% increase, so I apologize. I misread that.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, no problem.
I wanted to ask about single-family building permits. So that slide, which I have as 19, I don't know if it's 19 up there, but did that mean, you don't mean just building permits that a person, a homeowner would get. You're talking about a permit to build a single-family home.
Right, correct, right.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Then
So we're looking at that, and that really is a good indicator for us of then, because usually there's about a 12 to 18 month lag time. So when a building permit is issued by, the township or the borough, then we can expect to see a student maybe that following year, of enrollment. So again, that's just helpful for us to see how the building permits have changed, and as a result, how many new students we've seen, as those numbers have increased.
Okay, so you don't break this.
And then also then looking at what's projected.
Thank you. You don't break the building permits down into cluster housing, townhouses. You just did single-family building?
Right, and we really hadn't looked at the townhouse or other multifamily. Typically, the number of students that come from those housing is relatively low. I mentioned before, for every 100 single family, we see about 40 to 50 students coming out of those. For multifamily, it's closer to 20 to 25 students per unit.
Okay.
Just a follow-up to that, on page 22 to 25, the new housing development, 3,400 units. Does that include over 55s, or were you able to break out how many of those were over 55?
Yeah, we took out those that were over 55. So these are all non-age restricted units.
Are these units, did you include in them also sketch plans? And units,
yes.
units that are on the books for perhaps 5 or more years out? Because my experience in the past has been, numbers tend to be pretty accurate for the first 3, 4, perhaps 5 years, but after that, they start getting much fuzzier. So,
Right.
is that the way, is that your experience also, and is that what you take into consideration? I mean, sketch plans are kind of, they're
Right,
interesting,
yeah, no, that
but
is definitely taken in consideration. And Dave, forgive me, I forget the person who, that we talked with,
Alicia.
who provided the data. But I mean, she was extremely helpful in looking at, you know, kind of where things have been and how long they've been on the books and kind of what expectations were.
I have another question, unless.
go ahead. Director Crane.
Page 42, the PDE enrollment projections. You said that it was off, and obviously first grade, I see that's off significantly. The rest of the grades in the 2019 actuals compared to their estimates are pretty close. Is it possible that that first grade level is simply only off because we were better last year in attracting more charter school kids out of the going from the kindergarten program to our first grade? Because we've had that kind of success in the last couple of years. And to follow up, if that's the case, is that possible that PDE's numbers are actually closer?
They are close.
I mean, within a year of enrollment, I mean, my expectation would be that they're pretty close because you're really simply moving the kids that were there last year forward for the most part, and there isn't a whole lot of change. I mean, I do think, and I don't know what the methodology is that the state uses in terms of the enrollment projections, but I don't feel like they probably take into account the amount of development that's occurring and some of these other variables that we include. It's interesting to me when a district has been increasing at a very consistent rate, how they would determine that it would decrease by, you know, such a significant amount over that 10-year period by 700 students. When we looking at just purely based on the historical enrollment, where you've consistently year to year at every grade gained students. So, so for me, I don't know how they got to that number. But certainly, you know, the thing that was most significant in looking at it by grade was the difference at first grade. So.
I did find it interesting that PD numbers are so accurate because we have been rapidly growing over the years, and some of our prior enrollment projections haven't been as accurate in that, again, first couple of years pretty good, but after that, because of unanticipated development. So I guess it's more a question for Mr. Mattis, if you could find out at some point, I'm not sure the Pennsylvania Department of Education is interested in talking about enrollment today, you know, dealing with a pandemic. So I do appreciate this information. However, at some point, I would like to know how PDE came up with the numbers in the past and if they changed how they were collecting the data or not. Because, you know, to your point, Director Crane, they were pretty spot on, and for them to be saying that, no, they don't foresee that, I'm just curious as to why. So it would be worth looking into before we make, you know,
I
a
might be able to help you
decision
out
to
tonight.
do building for another, 1,200 students, and there's something out there that we're missing,
I can tell you from past experience that the Pennsylvania Department of Education uses live birth data. So they look at the live births within Chester County and within Downingtown Area School District and build their projections from there. They do not go through the detail of looking at housing developments and looking at single-family homes, multifamily homes, that kind of thing.
It's just fascinating that they're that accurate then. I just,
Well, I think as Tracy said, that we're just looking at a one-year snapshot here. So we're, if these numbers were projected out over 10 years, I think you'd see a lot of variation.
I have one last question, if I might, President Bertoni. So I'm curious as to the methodology that you use to make the projections. And I see the data that's going into this, the single-family homes and all of that. But our superintendent was kind enough to offer us a comparison with your data to a previous demographer. And your numbers really are most significantly different at the elementary level. Can you just speak to us as to what you might have done differently, or that's maybe not the norm?
Well,
I'm not
I don't know
sure.
that I could say what's different since I don't know what their methodology is, but I can tell you what I did, and that is, again, looking at the survival ratios, so measuring grade to grade, year to year, what's happened, looking at the number of births in each of the townships and the boroughs so that we know what the indicator is for kindergarten 5 years later. And then also looked at the amount of housing and what that would mean in terms of future new students. So based on, kind of those three key pieces of data, I developed a set of projection ratios for each of the grades. So, and then apply that forward. Additionally, I have to also project what I think the births are going to be to get, to those, 5 year, out in terms of the projections since that data isn't available because those kids haven't been born yet. So, looking at those three pieces of data, developing the projection ratios and applying those forward.
So is that a pretty standard practice across the industry to use those three pieces of data?
Yeah, I mean, there's really kind of a few different ways. The first method is the cohort survival method. So again, that's just a kind of a straight application of what the math would say, based on, those survival ratios. So, you just kind of apply those forward and taking a look at, what's happened, over the last 10 years and saying, okay, based on this, here's what that is. And that's kind of the straight cohort survival method. I assume that's probably pretty close to what PDE uses. Again, I don't know that for a fact. Additionally, there's, kind of just a straight housing method where you can take a look, and this is really used for districts that have a lot of housing and are quickly developing and growing overall. And just saying, okay, last year we had 500 new single-family homes. Our enrollment, increased by 1,000. So, we're getting, a yield factor of, 2 out of each, which would be extremely high. But then you can take that and multiply it forward, saying, okay, if we continue to develop at that same rate, 500 new homes per year, here's what we can expect over a period of time. And that's kind of a straight line in terms of the housing method. And those are probably the two most used. What I've done in your case is really combine those two methods. So looking at not only what's happened historically, but also looking at what's, currently in the works in terms of housing and how that may impact enrollment. So it's really a combination, because there hasn't really been couldn't really develop a yield factor per se based on the number of units, because that hasn't really been a consistent growth yet, and there's still so much left to develop. So really a combination of those two methods made the most sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from our Zoom? All righty, thank you for the report.
Well, thanks so much.
And,
Thank you, Tracy. Glad to have you. President Bertoni? that
Dr.
completes the
Molinardi is really
superintendent's
good. Thank you.
Now, if our students are with us, I apologize. Next time we will let you go before any reports.
report. You're supposed to like this stuff.
So I am thrilled. I understand we have 2 new student reps because we had 2 graduate next year. And we have Bevan, who's been with us for a year. So I'm not sure. I'd like to welcome Aaron and Jesslyn, and welcome back, Bevan. And I guess I'd like to ask who's going to go first.
I can go first. This is the report for Downingtown West. Next week, West will stage its first ever virtual play, Asylum. The students have auditioned, practiced, and will record the play via Zoom. The play is written by Downingtown native Dennis Bush, who students got to meet during their preparations. The play will be available for streaming starting November 20th. Next week, West will host the annual Spirit Week. The themes include D-West Pride, college gear, tie-dye, sports jersey, and PJ Day. Thanks to the Student Council for organizing this.
Wow.
From Thursday, November 26th to Sunday, November 29th, the Downingtown West Cross Country Team will host the 19th annual Chester County Turkey Trot. The 5K run and walk this year is virtual, and sign-up is free. T-shirts and sweatshirts are available for sale, and donations are accepted. Proceeds from the event benefit the Cross Country Team and Cure for Camp, a childhood cancer charity organization. Our seniors have been working very hard to finish college applications, and students of all grade levels have been participating in virtual college visits, meeting with admissions representatives via Zoom. Congratulations to the 3 students in the class of 2021 who were recognized as National Merit semifinalists: Nicholas Casano, Isabella Hughes, and Dylan O'Hara. These students scored in the top 1% of all PSAT takers in the entire state of Pennsylvania. Finally, the students of Downingtown West are very excited to be back in the building this week. To help prepare us for the transition, the West Student Council and Student Exec Board have been communicating the details of the new model directly with students via social media. The group has posted answers to frequently asked questions to the West Student Council Instagram page, making sure that everyone was ready to hit the ground running on Monday morning.
Thank you, Bevan. And to shirt and tie, I'm impressed. I want to ask you if you have the whole suit on. The advantages to Zoom. So we have our juniors. Who's next?
I can go next. This
Could
is the
you
report for Downingtown
introduce
7th
us? Could you introduce us and go ahead with your full name?
I'm Erin Yoder, and this is the report for Downingtown STEM Academy.
Thank you, Erin.
On October 29th, the National Honor Society NHS induction ceremony was held through Zoom and YouTube for the first time. 108 members were inducted, along with Mr. Matt Hobson, physics teacher and honorary member. Congratulations to our new inductees and our NHS Executive Board for a wonderful virtual ceremony. Throughout the month of October, the STEM Players Troupe has been developing a virtual dramatic production for the fall season. The first release has been posted on Student Life and is a collection of monologues and scenes based on a Halloween theme. The second release is a montage of monologues based on student actors' choice of theme. Mr. Wasser's engineering class had the opportunity to speak with 19 engineers throughout the past 2 weeks of November 2nd and November 9th. The engineers each gave a presentation on their background, specific field, and what their job is like. Students have been able to interact and ask questions about each of the various fields, including software engineering, nuclear engineering, chemical engineering, environmental engineering, biomedical engineering, and many more fields. Finally, on November 9th and 10th, STEM Academy students were able to go back to the building for socially distanced classes. Students who choose to go back with A through L last names will attend on Mondays and Wednesdays, and students with N through Z last names will attend on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Students are so excited to be back in the building and to be learning in person, and we love all the new additions. A big thank you to our superintendent, Dr. Lenardi, and our school board directors. Thank you.
Yeah, you see, you got to see the new school before we did. We can't wait to see it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Justin Givergis, and I'll be doing the report for Downingtown East. To start out, good evening. Downingtown East students were welcomed back to a beautifully decorated campus on Monday and Tuesday of this week. Our student council and senior parents filled the campus with motivational signs, sidewalk art, banners, and balloons. Our student council and the students who attended were excited to return in-person instruction, and the teachers were happy to have students back in their classrooms again. Student Council recently concluded the Cradles for Crayons fundraiser with roughly over 100 donations, and we'll be starting the Chester County food drive soon. With Thanksgiving around the corner, the Wellness Committee and the Hype Club encourage students to participate in the Thanksgiving food drive starting on November 13th, which provides Thanksgiving meals to families in need. Downingtown East Theater will present its first virtual performance, Vintage Hitchcock, a live radio play, streaming from November 20th at 7 p.m. through November 21st. Spies, murders, love, all the trademarks of Alfred Hitchcock come to life in the style in the 1940s radio broadcast. Combining acting talent with hundreds of sound effects, audiences will be transported back into the golden age of radio with Hitchcock's The Lodger, Sabotage, and 39 Steps. Visit www.downingtowneasttheater.com. Downingtown East just completed a weekend of virtual Model UN competitions at Penn State University. The topic was The Winds of Change. East took 3 outstanding delegates and 1 honorable mention award. For the outstanding delegates, Sons of Tangelo, Oscar Bustos, February Revolution, Lucas Shannon, Anarchy, Warlords of Vietnam, Chai Trolley Moore. And then honorable mention, the Second Great Depression, Yaja Gupta. Downingtown East academic team had their first virtual competition of the year on Tuesday, November 10th. East competed against Oxford, Unionville, and Great Valley. All of the matches were very competitive. We did not come away with a victory. We are looking forward to our next round of competition. Our fall athletes were very appreciative of our ability to compete this season. All teams had a healthy and successful season. 2 highlights of note were Abel Sullivan's 3rd place finish at the PIAA State Champion Golf Tournament, and our girls soccer team winning Chestmont League title and earning number 1 seed for District 1 playoffs. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all 3 of you, for being here. I can't wait to have you back in person. Okay, are we ready to move on? Okay. Director Blessed, are we having a student life report or a student life meeting anytime soon?
Unfortunately, no, but next week we do have our first Zoom meeting, so
Good.
in December, I'll be able to report out on student life. Thank you.
Thank you. Cultural equity report, Dr. McNeil?
Thank you, President Bertoni. The Cultural Equity Task Force last met on October the 27th. There were about 50 plus participants. Ms. Hankins reviewed the September meeting and gave an update on the Director of Equity, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion position. Then Dr. Reed updated the group on the Making Connections program, which I'd just like to speak to a little bit, because the administrative assistant at STEM, Shanette Bernard, who is also, by the way, an East Brandywine Township resident, had thought of this idea and brought it to the attention of her principal, Mr. Campbell, and Dr. Reed. And Shanette's idea was to bring together local law enforcement and high school students in order to establish a rapport and build trust between our police and our students. They met over the summer, they being Mr. Campbell, Dr. Reed, and Ms. Bernard, with all the other two high school principals, and discussed about making the idea work, and everybody is on board. So I just wanted to have a shout out to Shanette for taking a very positive activist approach to finding some solutions within our community. We then moved into breakout rooms where we discussed the equity audit and the assessment data that came out of that. We ended the meeting with a discussion of the work of the task force moving forward and what that might look like. The idea of a book discussion was mentioned, and task force members recommended several books for consideration. The next meeting is scheduled for December the 1st. And oh, by the way, when those book suggestions come out, board members, I think it might be a good idea for us to engage in one or more of those discussions. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. McNeil. Director Kring, DARK, and the intermediate unit?
Thank you, President Bertoni. DARK did meet for a virtual meeting on October 29th. We discussed the current state of the budget for the Downingtown Area Recreation Consortium. Just want to throw that name out there for people who don't know it. The current budget troubles, also a little bit about programming for hopefully the winter. Luckily, the townships, even though the township budgets have been strained this year, the townships, for the most part, look like they are going to continue the same funding for DARK next year as they did this year. However, due to the fact that there has been relatively very little income for DARK this year, we have decided that most likely around Thanksgiving we are going to take a winter break for our executive director, probably just till the middle of January, just to keep our finances in check as much as we possibly can. The DARK board is scheduled to meet tomorrow night via Zoom as well to discuss how things look in November. Moving on to the intermediate unit, the Chester County Intermediate Unit held its monthly meeting on Wednesday, October 21st via Zoom. There was a presentation on evaluating students in the pandemic, new challenges, solutions, and new solutions. Since the shutdown in March, there has been considerable discussion about providing our students with access to remote instruction and safely reopening schools for in-person programming. While quality instruction is essential to our schools, there is a federal mandate under IDEA to identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities that reside within their LEAs. COVID-19 has presented challenges to districts and the CCIU in meeting this mandate. The CCIU generated solutions to meet the needs of our organization as well as the districts we serve. In a typical school year, thousands of multidisciplinary evaluations and reevaluations are completed by teachers, school psychologists, related service professionals, and other specialists across Chester County. Evaluations came to an abrupt halt with COVID-19. So evaluation practices and procedures had to change in order to safely and effectively assess students. The volume of evaluations continued to snowball, and a backlog of evaluations occurred. The CCIU and other providers made significant gains prior to the pandemic with respect to providing therapies and other supportive services to students in virtual environments. Districts and IUs began to crowdsource solutions to this complex challenge. The CCIU became an information hub and a leader in forging the path ahead. We realized that we needed to move towards gaining access to digital assessment products and training to complete evaluations in new ways. We worked closely with district partners, legal counsel, independent consultants, and industry leaders to establish effective and defensible evaluation practices. The CCIU established a Chester County Digital Assessment Library through Pearson, who provides widely used assessments of cognitive ability, academic achievement, speech and language ability, occupational and physical ability. The CCIU leveraged purchasing power and negotiated competitive consortium pricing for the next 5 years. As of today, 38 school districts and 3 IUs are assessing and affording these digital assets through the Chester County Digital Assessment. The CCIU team has developed resources that have been shared with evaluation teams across the Commonwealth that provide a roadmap for in-person assessment, iPad administration and virtual or remote assessment, iPad administration and virtual or remote assessment. Over the next 3 months, the CCIU will be hosting virtual professional development sessions with trainers from New York, Texas, and Florida for school psychologists to refill their bag of tricks with skills, tips, and strategies for safe assessments. In other news, the board appointed Dr. Stephen Gerhardt to the position of Assistant Executive Director of the CCIU for a 4-year term commencing on January 4th, 2021. The board also approved change in position for 2 Assistant Directors of Student Services positions to Director positions. And the area of finance, the board approved an agreement with the County of Chester to provide grant administrative services for $15 million in child care subsidy programs. The next meeting of the CCIU Board of Directors is scheduled for next Wednesday. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Kring. The Educational Foundation and the Legislative Committee, Director Gibson.
Yes, thank you, President Bertoni. The Education Foundation met last night, November 10th. They discussed their winter programs. They're very excited to hopefully get back into the buildings and do some after-school programs with the children in the elementary schools in 6th grade center. Their next meeting will be on December 8th. There was no October legislative meeting due to the election. Their next meeting will be on 11/25. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Communities that Care, Vice President Britton.
Thank you, President Bertone. CTC last met on October 20th, 2020. CTC received a grant to support evidence-based programs assessing substance use, prevention, and mental health. Strategies include professional development for 10 prevention specialists in the Sage Straight program, and the curriculum Too Good for Drugs, which includes a social emotional learning component. This program will be part of the grade 10 health curriculum. Next, CTC is partnering with DASD and the Karen Treatment Program to facilitate a parent program on November 17th, focusing on substance use, prevention skills, and resources, offering it as a lunch and learn 12 to 1 p.m. Information is posted on the Downtown Area School District and CTC website, also social media sites, so please share away. Finally, Hype Clubs will receive a youth-friendly PAVE toolkit, including key data points for youth and strategies to share information with peers, and gather feedback from youth to help with hype prevention strategies. The next virtual CTC collective meeting will be November 17th from 12 to 1 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Vice President Britton. The Wellness Committee, Director Grad.
Thank you, President Bertoni. The members have selected 1 of 5 subcommittees based on the 5 wellness goals. At our meeting next week, each subcommittee will develop outcomes, action steps, resources, and a timeline for their section for the DASD Wellness Roadmap. And I would like to think that I'll have those goals for you next month. And then the next Wellness Committee meeting is virtual on November 16th at 9 to 10. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Graham. I do have a question with wellness. Has there been any conversation about the pandemic and maybe having some education along that line in our wellness program?
There definitely has been some conversation about it. I think that it's something that, it's a matter of figuring out how what else is needed on top of what is already currently happening, and it's definitely a discussion that needs to continue.
For us to get through this, there was just certain things we need to do, the masks, the washing of the hands, the safe distance, and anytime we can encourage our students to follow that would certainly be helpful.
Couldn't agree more.
Director Grab, even though now you have subgroups in the Wellness Committee, are board members welcome to attend the meeting, or would you rather, because I wouldn't know now that you've formed subgroups, whether that would be an intrusion?
Nope. The subgroups usually meet separate of the entire committee. So, Yep. The full Wellness Committee meeting is open.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any old business? Seeing none, can I have a motion? Is there anything on the consent agenda that someone would like removed? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the action agenda, finance report. Director Kring.
Thank you, President Bertoni. Item number 1 on the action agenda, request approval of draft transportation contract amendment with George Kraft Jr. and Sons Incorporated. Reimbursement is for 65% of the daily rate for the virtual school days from August 31st to October 23rd, 2020, and 75% of the daily rate for virtual Fridays starting October 30th. Estimated savings, $847,000.
Do I have any comments or questions?
Need a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, do I have a second?
Second.
This savings number is based on the hope that we get the same subsidy that we received from the state last year,
That's correct, President Bertoni.
and that is not guaranteed at this point.
It is not.
Dr. McNeil.
So I'd just like to say that it's a little troubling having to vote on this, considering some of the things that have happened with bus companies not being able to live up to what they had promised the school district. In addition, some of the concerns about procedures not being in place in at least one bus. So it's troubling because we know that we need bus transportation for our students, and yet it seems that our people, our transportation department, our principals, and probably our teachers as well, are waiting for buses to come later, are having to do double duty with double runs. And I understand the issues that they're having, but we're also paying them a lot of money on promises. So I just needed to say that before we took the vote.
Yeah, I'd also like to comment. I've been back and forth on this issue. We don't know what the state subsidy that's going to survive in its present form in 21-22. My biggest problem is the retroactivity of some of this contract amendment. I certainly want us to be able to have the bus drivers available, and I want to make sure we take care of the bus companies. I just feel that the retroactive structure is too generous for a service that we did not get. I'd like to ask the administration to come back with a new proposal that tightens that up a little bit. I do appreciate the 3-year average of fixed costs in the Downingtown contract that was given to the board a few weeks ago. It just seems that some of these descriptions here are items that have not been going on in the 2 months that we did not have bus service while we were in full virtual. So I would like to see this contract amendment restructured and brought back to us in December.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? On Zoom?
Sure.
With this, if we go back to all virtual, will we continue to pay this?
Yes, we would pay them for the fixed cost, the 65% rate, to help them to afford their buses, to be able to make payments on their buses, on their facilities, so that they can service us once we do get back into full swing again at some point.
Thank you.
Any other, go ahead.
May I be recognized, President Bertoni?
I'm sorry?
May I
Vice
be
President
recognized?
Britton, go ahead.
I really struggle with the idea of having to pay for services we're not using, but I struggle more with creating an issue that will affect the district long term. And so it's my feeling that if we don't help keep the bus companies afloat, we're not going to be able to transport students to school. And I don't think that's a good, we don't need layers upon layers of problems, right? We need to figure out a way that we can move forward with our partners that are critical to the running of our district. So this is a tough and difficult situation. I just hope I'm making decisions that are full of wisdom and not taken lightly. So this is difficult. Thank you.
If they continue to lose bus drivers to the point where we can't open school, which has happened in another district, are we still tied to this agreement, and do we continue to pay 65% for the buses that they're not giving us right now? I'm concerned about having incentive to have bus drivers to get us back on the road. That's a struggle for me, and I don't know. I know we have counsel here, maybe they can answer that, but you know, if all of a sudden there aren't enough buses and we can't have school, I'm not comfortable agreeing to continue paying the 65%. So I don't know if we can add a clause or if there's any protection for us in this agreement.
President Bertoni, I'll be honest with you. I'd have to look at that a lot more deeply before I advise the board this evening, because there are some very enforceable provisions that you're agreeing to, and I didn't review it for escape clauses, quite frankly. So I'd like to look at that
I'm just very concerned, because if, you know, there's no incentive to go back to work. I mean, I understand there's some incentive, but there's less of an incentive to come back if they're going to get 65%, whether they're able to give us a bus or not. So I wouldn't object to a special meeting if we need to have one to do it sooner. Otherwise, I kind of agree with Director Crane that perhaps we relook at this. I just want to make sure we're protected. I am not opposed to supporting the bus companies, but I want to make sure that that we're protected on the other end. I don't know how other board members feel about that.
I think that's an extremely valid point, to have a school district not be able to open because the bus company can't provide the number of drivers needed for buses is just not acceptable, and yet that company is still taking the money from that district. We do not want to be in that position.
That's my biggest hesitancy right now.
So I'm not sure what we need to do. First of all, our solicitor needs to look at the contract more carefully to see if there is any disclaimer that would get us out of that situation. And if not, then we need some assurances.
Dr. McNeil, just so that you're comfortable, those contracts were circulated. I did review them.
Okay.
But the questions that are being raised tonight are different than the issues that I dug into when I reviewed the addenda.
I understand. So you would need to look at them more closely again in light of these questions.
That would make some sense.
I think so too.
Director Grayad?
Can you speak to any negative impacts that not voting on this tonight might have for the district?
Probably the biggest negative impact would be, the companies have been waiting for payment through, from typically they would see payment in August, September, October, through November. They'd wait another month, obviously. That's probably going to be their biggest concern, cash flow. I know that, we talk about non-payment. We had that situation with Wolfington where they couldn't provide 15 buses for us. So we would not pay them for those buses going forward because they're not.
And I understand that, but again, I'm talking about, are we locked in that if the governor tells us in 3 weeks we're to go virtual, that, I take that back. Kraft calls us up in 3 weeks and says, we don't have enough buses, and we're dealing with 3 different bus companies. So even if they each can't give us 8, we now are being forced to close because they can't live up to their end of the bargain, not because the governor said we're going to close. So it's the, so that's where my comfort, that's my discomfort. I even get some of the retroactivity because they still have to pay for their buses, even though we were virtual. But I don't want to subsidize them and be virtual because they can't give us buses. So I just want to make sure we have that protection, that we get our buses and then we'll live up,
Yeah, I'd like to.
I guess I'm curious, what is the board's plan then? I hear a lot of consternation about making this payment.
I don't have a problem giving them partial payment now for the services they've provided and the expectations, but I don't want to be able to, I want to be able to say, you didn't give us our buses, we had to close, so we're not going to give you the 65% reimbursement.
Well, I'm looking for clear direction to give to the administration.
And I think that's what we're asking them to look into, and as I said, I wouldn't object to a short board meeting if we need to before December, if that gets resolved, but I need that question answered before I can support it.
Can I just interject?
So, I guess the question becomes, can we rewrite the contract to give out their payments that are in retro, and then maybe redo part of the future contract?
I would rather they come up with they reach agreement within the next week and we have another board meeting.
Yeah, we're voting on a contract amendment, so we can't it's not a resolution that we're changing on here. And if I could just put 2 things in here. We are paying the bus companies from the beginning of the year for what services we were provided, which was around 70 buses, I think, about 1/3 of the fleet. The other thing is we did, even though it was from last year, we had split up the payments of the remainder of last year over 4, I think it was 4 payments. So they did have in cash flow of 65% in August and September, or should have through those payments. Am I correct? Because when we voted on it, we did a June, July, August, September, June, July, August, September, 4 payments.
We did those payments were for.
They were for last spring when we paid them through not their fault or our fault, but the fact that there were no buses running.
Correct.
So they did have cash flow then, and we have been paying them. We're not saying that we're not paying the bus companies, and we're
No, no,
paying
I
them.
know. I'm
We're
just
paying them
saying
for
that-
all buses right now. So it's not, we're not paying the bus companies. This is over services that were not rendered, and what the fixed costs were there. So, and I understand, I agree with your point. I don't want to be locked into a contract that stipulates if they can't provide bus drivers and buses, that we still continue to pay them. So I would want to make sure that that's out of that.
And we have to close school down because of it.
I guess I'm confused because I know we're paying for services rendered, but I think more importantly, and what the community would like them to hear is that if we don't pay some form of the cost that these buses companies could go under, and so that's the downside. So I just want to be clear
All right.
with the
Again-
community.
Again, Vice President Britton, I am willing to, if it's that dire, we can have a meeting next week. I want to make sure that the taxpayers are protected, and I want to make sure there's incentive that we have buses so our children can get to school.
So I couldn't quite hear our solicitor, so I was wondering if Mr. Donatelli could maybe repeat a little louder, I'm sorry, what he said about review of the contract and what the protections were for the taxpayers.
Sure, Vice President Britton. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the modifications, the addenda that are being promoted by Act 15 is to assure that certain payments are made to the transportation companies to cover certain costs so that they'd be ready to perform transportation services when the schools require transportation as opposed to being all virtual. The question that's been asked is, well, what happens if the school district enters into this contract with the addendum language and then they don't perform? That's the question that's being addressed this evening. In most other situations, my response would be, well, if they don't perform, they don't get paid. However, I didn't look at the addenda for that purpose. The reason I reviewed the addenda was for compliance with Act 15, just like we looked at it back for school year 2019-2020, because we've done this once before. The school districts have done this once before. So my comment was, if the board is uncomfortable with the possibility that there could be a failure of the transportation companies to perform, and they'd like to make sure that the language in the addendum doesn't do anything to rob the district of rights they would normally have, I'd want to look at that again rather than just shoot from the hip. That was
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
And again, the only reason I bring it up and didn't think of it prior is that we have a district in Chester County that is currently not open because the bus companies did not have enough drivers. So I just don't want us to be in that kind of position. But it happened last week, I might not have thought of it, to be honest.
Voting down and then send it back, or do we have
and there's a third option, President Bertoni. You could vote on because I do know that there is some importance to these motions. You could vote up or down, contingent on my review or my office's review. And if I was uncomfortable with the protections, not being there as articulated tonight wouldn't be binding. And if my office was to approve it, after, again, consultation with the administration, then we'd have no issue. You wouldn't need to reconvene it. So that would be my suggestion, because often you pass motions based upon solicitor review, and sometimes we review those documents and we have to come back and do it again, and other times they go right through. So that would be the third option.
Are we comfortable with that?
Oh, I'm a little confused by that. So based on solicitor review, which you said to me, I thought that you had reviewed the contract. So the motion needs to be amended, doesn't it?
It doesn't. I reviewed the, it does not. I reviewed the agreement, Dr. McNeil, for the purposes of Act 15 compliance.
Right.
Not for the potential that the busing company would, the transportation companies would enter into an agreement with the district and then not perform.
Okay.
I'd want to go back and look at not only the addenda, but the underlying agreement as well, to make sure that the school district was protected in the event that were to occur.
And what would happen if your reanalysis of the contract under these conditions advised the district that we would be liable if the bus company could not perform, that we would still need to pay them? Then what?
Then the review would fail and you would not have entered into the addenda. I would not advise that it be executed.
I guess I'm just very uncomfortable in voting for this motion the way it's stated, because it's going to be in the board minutes as stated, and we're going to approve it.
We'd amend it.
I'm sorry?
So we would add the language about solicitor review. Yeah. So it would
Yeah,
be-
if you'd like to, sure. That's my suggestion, Dr. Lenardi. I mean, if your question, Dr. McNeil, was withdraw the motion and remake it with the language contingent on solicitor's review, you could do that. That would be proper procedure.
Exactly, that's what I was suggesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually wrote the letter.
Okay.
So a vote yes would be a vote to reimburse and to pay them the 75% rate for the virtual Fridays, but the rest of the contract would be upon solicitor review.
So it would have to protect us.
But we would still pay them this. This would be what we were voting yes on, the retroactive, no?
Well, the whole thing, we're voting that if our interests are protected, they answer the question that, and it may be that the contract is modified somewhat, correct? Would we have to revote if you modify it?
Yes.
Yes.
So if it doesn't protect our interests, as we just requested at this meeting, then no, we will have to vote on it again.
And if it does, then this just stands. Okay, thank you.
If there's a clause in there that protects us, it'll go through. If there's not a clause in there, then it will not.
Okay.
And we may have to vote again next week, or it may wait till December based on the conversation the administration has with us.
Okay.
And this would be for all three contracts.
Don't we have to vote either way? Because if the solicitor comes back and tells us that in his expert opinion, we would be held liable for paying the bus companies, even if they didn't perform,
We'd have to vote on a new one anyway.
then we would have to vote no next time around. Am I hearing? We have to vote either way, yes?
Or we change the contract
Yes, okay.
amendment. I mean, I would prefer to pull it and get the information, and even if it's a 5-minute board meeting via Zoom, I would prefer that. That's my opinion.
That means we would pull all three.
But, right, because they're basically, they're the same spirit.
Well, I'm looking at the agenda, and it was on your motion, Director Kring, so if you wanted to move to withdraw your motion, and I didn't note the second agreed, we could pull it from the agenda if you wanted to.
So I wouldn't have to do all three, because I haven't,
Right.
okay. I will motion to withdraw the motion if, yeah.
Jimmy's saying put your mic on, we can't hear you.
So the motion is withdrawn. Is that,
Does that need a second?
Jen,
who seconded?
who
or the-
seconded the motion?
Audrey second.
Audrey, are you willing to withdraw your second?
I withdraw my second.
Okay, so then we'll leave the bus contracts till get that resolved.
And so I understand the status of the agenda then, there'll be no action on items 1, 2, or 3.
Right. Well, because,
So you have to either withdraw them or table them, or you can just let them on the agenda and not vote on them.
Yeah,
right, we're
because-
withdrawing all three, I think. Well, all right, well, we're withdrawing 1 and we're tabling 2 and 3.
all right.
Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what David's asking for.
Okay.
It's done before, though.
Okay. Request approval of a contract with On The Go Kids to guarantee 3 additional 72-passenger buses for 180-day payment pending solicitor review. Total cost $156,320 per year. Good.
Second?
Second.
I know we discussed this somewhat. If you want to explain,
Yes, this is, these are 3 passenger buses that On The Go Kids would guarantee for us for contract length through June 30th, 2026. And we discussed this last week.
right.
Any questions?
This would go into it, for now, it would give us 3 more buses for busing that are under our control, and it'll allow us to add 3 buses immediately when we go back to full-time to help offset the overcrowding, the times of the buses that are going to the 6th grade center.
Correct.
That's the objective. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Houghton,
Yes.
Director Wisdom,
Yes.
Director Graham,
Yes.
Director Gibson,
Yes.
Lust,
Yes.
Director McNeil,
Yes.
Vice President Britton,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
President Bertoni.
Yes. Can I ask, Mr. Donatelli, do we need to vote on tabled items to table it, or can they just be tabled? And the withdrawal, is there any vote necessary?
They can just be tabled. Director Krings tabled them. They would have been his motion. That's fine.
Okay.
And you're tabling them to an uncertain date, so that's the proper way to do it.
Thank you.
Next item, request approval of a contract amendment with NVR to sell district property in East Brandywine Township known as the Weaver Parcel. The housing development has conditional use approval to be age restricted to 55 and over. The total escrow deposits are $750,000. There will be 1 single and final closing. The latest closing date is November 2021, and no further time extensions will be granted. Selling price $9,500,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Blust, Director Gibson,
Yes.
Vice President Britton,
Yes.
she said no.
Yes.
Okay.
I think she said yes.
Director McNeil,
Yes.
Director Houghton,
Yes.
Director Graham,
Yes.
Director Kring,
Yes.
Director Wisdom,
Yes.
President Bertoni.
Yes. Is there any other items that require the attention of the board? You want to move on to Jay? You want me to?
Yeah. You want me to say what Jay is?
Well, I don't care. I don't know who's.
Yeah, okay, so all I wanted to do is that we had talked about our district calendars, and I just wanted the board to know and the public to know that they're out on our district website. And we also are soliciting feedback at this point from teachers. So I thought we'd get all that and sift it down to see what people say, and then bring something back to you in December, because we really don't need to vote on it till January. So I think that's what Vice President Britton was kind of looking for, to give it that time to kind of permeate out in the environment.
If this is Dr. Reed's put it together, if we have any questions or concerns, can we just send them to you? So it can be added to the list, if you get any from the teachers? Or
we'll get some.
Or, yeah, or the community, I'm sure we will.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
thank you. So if you have some questions or suggestions, you send them to Dr. Reed. Okay, moving on. Visitors. The Downingtown Board of Directors encourages public comment from its citizens. Each community member may speak for a period of no longer than 5 minutes. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in further deliberations. Our individual email addresses are on the website. If you'd like to contact your individual board representative, we ask that you please direct complaints of a personal nature regarding an individual employer directly to the superintendent. And since we are virtual, we are reading the comments during the meeting. So I turn it over to you, Ms. Warhay.
Carrie Corrigan from Upper Euclid Township. All 3 of my children have had a successful return to school. I appreciate the effort of the teachers to make this transition smooth. All 3 have demonstrated a positive response to being back with their teachers and classmates. Once again, they are looking forward to school. I have not had this positivity in them since before this school shut down. On the days when they attend school, they are excited and have a lot to share on their day. On the virtual days, the response of what they learned is normally nothing. My 6th grade son was very excited to attend the 6th grade center. He was happy to meet his teachers and to make a connection with them. We are hoping with more in-person teaching will mean a return to school, the robust curriculum we have come to expect from DASD. My son is doing extremely well, but it is not being pushed to his full potential. One of my 1st graders is doing a fantastic job in school, but has difficulty at home because he gets frustrated when he doesn't understand directions. When he is in school, his teacher is able to help him before he gets frustrated. My other son, who is lucky enough to attend 4 days a week, struggles with the virtual learning on Fridays. He has issues with executive functioning, and it is very difficult for him to remain organized. He absolutely loves being in the building and working with his teacher in person. He is also benefiting greatly from receiving occupational and physical therapy from trained professionals. I urge Dr. Lenardi and the entire board to consider the emotional and mental impacts a return to virtual learning will have on our students. All children need consistency. They also need to feel a sense of belonging. They cannot feel feel isolated at home in front of their computer screen. Learning is supposed to be fun and engaging, and part of the job of schools is to instill the love of learning. No matter how amazing the teachers are, they cannot fully engage students through a computer screen. I've seen such a huge positive change in my children even after just a few days. I'm scared to see what a shutdown will do to them. Please look at these children as people and not just numbers. They need strong leaders to stand up for them and provide them with the education they deserve. They are the future of our country and the world. Jackie Hutton from East Brandywine Township. Please keep our kids in person at school. Their mental health is at stake, and that is far greater threat than this virus. We deserve better from the district and for you to make informed decisions, not blindly following the health department that clearly is not making recommendations that are in the best interest of our children. Gary Lipkin from West Bradford Township. Given that the district is providing compensatory education for students with special education needs, is there a plan for regular ed students as well? Countless students in our districts have had difficulty accessing their education through the virtual platform, not just students with special education needs. The data is clear that virtual learning is not for every student. Simply review first marking period grades across the district. Does the district have a plan to fill in the learning gaps for students who struggled to learn in the virtual format? Ruth Lawler from Upper Euclid Township. I want to stress how much our children need to be back in school 5 days a week. The mental health and general well-being of our students depends on it. Nick Cronauer from East Cowan Township. To the school board and our superintendent, I urge you to consider the educational, social, and emotional impact of remote and hybrid learning, not just COVID cases. We need you to provide an actual choice to the community to reopen schools full-time for 5 days of in-person instruction for our children. My third grade son took a virtual reading assessment on Friday and failed that assessment. This took his teacher by surprise, as he is generally such a leader in his reading group. So she decided to have him retake the assessment on his in-person day. He has scored 100 on this retest. This is clear evidence that the virtual learning platform is not working for my son. I am certain that he is one example of many. I am grateful that he has a teacher who is willing to make adjustments during this incredibly trying time to help her students succeed. Each day my son is home for virtual instruction is a struggle and consists with crying, breakdowns, and falling behind. Each day my son is in the classroom for instruction, he comes home smiling and full of life. This hybrid model you forced on us has my fun-loving, outgoing, extroverted son withdrawn, angry, depressed, and feeling less than. What the district has done is not good enough. The cyber model or 5 days in person are the only two choices that should be on the table. Allow parents who feel their kids need to be home the choice to keep them there on cyber educational instruction, and allow parents who feel their kids need to be in the classroom the choice to send them into the school buildings for educational instruction, socialization, and emotional well-being. Anything other than this is continued disservice to your community and to our children, as well as gross negligence of the mental and emotional health of the thousands of students who are enrolled in Downingtown. I hold you all who voted for this hybrid model individually responsible for the decline in my son's mental and emotional health, as it is a direct result of your decisions. The hybrid model that we are currently in, even criticized by Dr. Lenardi, saying the staggered option, hybrid, still calls for too many students to be in any building at one time. It makes it unrealistic to maintain social distancing at all times. It also offers no protection for teachers, as they would still see all their students over a 2-day period. Moreover, it does not allow for teachers to focus on half of their class that would be home watching a live stream of the classroom. This forces the at-home instruction to be totally asynchronous or Zooming and watching the teacher teach the other half of the class. This model also does not assist working parents or essential employees in any way, since some days their children would be at home and other days they would be at school. Yet here we are being told that this model works and is safe. Nothing changed. There is still no way to social distance at all times, only when feasible, which should be acceptable. The teachers are still seeing all of their students over a 2-day period. This teacher still can't focus on half the class while the rest sit on Zoom. There is no excuse or reason that we should be sold this model as one that will work now when it wasn't good enough just 3.5 months ago. COVID is not going away, but my son is declining each week. This can't continue. Dr. Redfield of the CDC warned that school closures would create its own public health emergency, and is occurring now within my family and others. Act now and please consider the educational, emotional, and social impacts. Give families the choice for 5 days in-person instruction. Christina Ross, West Bradford Township. When deciding on fully reopening or closing schools, please consider the percent positivity rate also, as the focus seems to be on the number of cases per 100,000. According to the percent positivity rate, our children should have been in school since August, like many of the private schools that have experienced minimal cases. Please also make your decision based on what is happening in our DASD schools in regard to whether the virus is being contained or spreading among students. We know there will be some cases in the district, but if they are being contained based on the protocols in place, please do not close all of the schools. However, if contact tracing confirms the virus is spreading within the school, then closing is the right decision. Otherwise, I believe the parents should have a choice to send their children to school 5 days a week to receive the education they deserve. Thank you for commitment to make these hard decisions for our children. Stephanie Griffiths from East Brandywine Township. My 7th grade twins and 10th grader had a great day this past Monday. They said going to school was much better than staring at a screen all day long. They came home in good spirits and enjoyed seeing their teachers in person. Kids' mental health is so important. Keep our kids in school, even if it is only for 2 days a week. Sarah LaFrance from Euclid Township. Here is a different perspective on why our kids emotionally and mentally need to be back in school 5 days a week. My son, Gray, has been back at Downingtown High School East since the beginning of school. Most days he comes home saying the day was okay, but yesterday, the first day back for all his peers, he came home excited. He told us, I love school, and then promptly did all his homework, which never happens. Having his friends back, seeing them in the hall, being able to talk to them face to face, energized him like we have not seen in months. The smile on his face when he got into the car was enough to make me know that these kids need to be together, Monday through Friday. Lindsay Polidor from Downingtown Borough. I just want to thank you for all the work that has been done to get the students back in the buildings. My oldest had his first day back yesterday and told me that it was the best day all year. The social aspect of school is so important to my son, and I haven't seen him so excited to learn. His grades have been slipping, and I know that being back in the building will help him get back on track. Thank you for the progress we are making. We're looking forward to moving forward. Jessica Serrano from East Brandywine Township. Please keep our teachers and community safe, respect the science, and keep the kids home as cases are on the rise. We have kept our kids virtual for just this reason, protect the teachers. Miguel Serrano from East Brandywine Township. I disagree with putting our teachers and community at risk of increased exposure that would surely follow the schools remain open. Teachers need to be protected. Karen McGill from East Brandywine Township. Please do not alter the plans for pandemic closures. The safety of our children, our teachers, and our community are at stake. It seems inconceivable that at a time when COVID numbers are hitting a record high and society is moving indoors for winter, where transmission is easier, that we would expand our risk tolerance. It is almost as inconceivable as a phased closure. Either the numbers are unsafe or they are not. Phased closure of schools doesn't change that. Lauren Mounts from Euclid Township. I am beyond thrilled that my children have started to receive some in-person education. What concerns me is that it has been openly stated that staff are being told to prepare for to go virtual after Thanksgiving. I'm so disturbed that this district is not making in-person education more of a priority. As so many studies have stated, it should be the case. Even what Europe has decided to do with their recent lockdown, in-person school is essential to ensuring our students receive the quality education they deserve and that their mental well-being is preserved. Studies are also confirming that schools are not super spreaders. So just because our country cases are rising, mostly due to nursing homes, there should be no reason for virtual learning. Lastly, the district has received close to $500,000 in additional funding to ensure students are safe and staff are safe. If you move to virtual, will you be refunding that money? My family and I hope this district does everything they can to ensure schools remain open, and furthermore, that we move to a full 5 days in person so that our kids receive the education they deserve. Kim Harris from Wallace Township. I would like to thank the administration and the school board for finally taking the action of opening for hybrid learning. I've been impressed by the bus safety and the protocols in the buildings to maintain distancing, enforcing masks, and preventing the spread of COVID. The fact that the incidence of COVID-19 among our student population is currently less than 3% confirms that we can safely operate our public schools by adhering to proper infection prevention protocols. The emotional, physical, and mental benefits of our children attending live in-person schools should outweigh the possible risks of exposure. If we continue to follow these protocols, I have serious concerns that a return to the virtual learning model will have a lasting adverse impact on our children. Sophia Pargamoticus. I want to share the experience of both of our kids that went back to school this week. They were so happy to be back in school. Their spirits are up, and they are looking forward to the next day they can go back. With all the rumors around the district that schools may be closing again, this will be a totally devastating blow to our kids. Kids need to be back to school. We are continuing to hide behind some non-proven guidelines and numbers that don't support the risk of mental health issues. Why some other states were able to open schools and keep them open, even though their numbers are about the same or higher than here in Chester County. Please stop hiding behind some unreasonable guidelines and take responsibility for the kids. The mental, social, and emotional health and well-being of our kids is at stake. Start thinking outside the box. How many schools around in our area were open since August and September and proved they can do it safely? Look at Europe. Some countries are going on another lockdown, but they keep their schools open. They kept them open and they keep them open because, again, they care about the well-being of their kids. We are urging the board to do the same for our kids. Keep the schools open, even if it is on the hybrid schedule. This virus is not going anywhere. Just like the flu, we have this virus around for a long time. The idea of being committed to stopping it and ignoring the declining mental health of kids is appalling. It is grossly negligent and shows the lack of consideration and care for these children. Reagan Howard from East Brandywine Township. I know that a lot of parents are angry about Dr. Lenardi's warning that rising numbers may require the schools to go back to virtual and that there will still be plenty of comments here. I understand these concerns as I have seen how happy my daughter has been to be back in school this week. However, I also acknowledge the fact that what is happening around us. I work in healthcare in Lancaster and York counties and see what is happening in those counties that are slightly ahead of us on the trajectory. The fact that these numbers are already higher than they were in early spring, and without putting a quarantine in place, they will continue to rise beyond what we have already seen. Already the teams I work with at the two main hospitals in these counties are reporting full ICUs and full capacity for beds. There is no reason to think that the numbers like these will continue to miss Chester County. At some point, it will no longer be safe to have kids back in the school, and we need to accept that and allow our superintendent and our board to receive and follow the guidance from the health department. They have experience in public health and handling these things and know what they are talking about. I respect your choices and trust the fact that you're trying to balance between what is best for the kids developmentally and emotionally and what is best for the community from a public health standpoint. Joshua Begay from Euclid Township. Even at 2 days a week for a short period of time, there has been a drastic and fantastic improvement in our students' health, well-being, and learning. I thank the board members for that. You can imagine my extreme disappointment when I learned that Dr. Lenardi is now telling the community to prepare for a forced or required school building closure. Why does this board permit Dr. Lenardi to routinely mistake facts and blame others for the decisions that she reaches and outcomes she influences? No one is forcing or requiring her or this board to close or open buildings. The decision is yours alone. The Chester County Health Department does not make your decision. They are a deeply flawed political institution that, unlike you all, has no responsibility to advocate for education. The lack of innovation and preparedness from our superintendent does not make your decision. You are empowered to remove her when and if you see fit. The minority of parents and teachers and students who want to continue with their virtual-only model do not make your decision. Those parents, teachers, and students already have a choice to remain virtual. Fear of coronavirus lawsuits does not make your decision for you. The high volume of lawsuits you settle every board meeting shows that you're familiar with and well-equipped to deal with any litigation. The vast majority of your constituents are pleading with you to reopen schools today, fully today. Please do the right thing and give back to the people the choice they should have had always about their own health decisions. The community depends on you. Jessica Hun Kenzik from East Brandywine Township. Thank you for all how much time, energy, thought, and emotion you have put into doing what is best for our kids, educators, and community. I know you have all been faced with an impossible task. I write today just to ask that you keep following guidance despite any pressure to do differently and paying attention to the numbers. The schools are the center of our community, and while numbers rise, they are the place where the most people gather currently. Therefore, schools can be have the biggest impact both up and down throughout the community. None of this is ideal for any family, but we can get through this together. To do that, we all have to care about the health of all as well. Thank you, and take care of yourselves as well. Karen Kerr from West Pikeland Township. My son has attended in-person school for just 1 day, and it has made a huge positive impact on his mental and academic health. I do realize that the incidence numbers are increasing. However, now we know what we are doing and how to stay safe. I, as well as many other parents, want the hybrid model to continue regardless of the numbers. Other districts, including the one I work at in Delaware County, where they have a very high incident number, are staying hybrid. The reason is the schools are following safety protocols and it is keeping them safe. DASD should continue to follow the well-planned out safety protocols and let our kids stay in school. Rachel Miller from Euclid Township. Although the DASD is only offering hybrid and 2 in-person school days per week versus 5, I've seen a tremendous positive turnaround in my children's mental health when we were able to go in person. Days when my children attend brick and mortar school, they are actually learning things and receiving an education. Days when my children are forced into virtual Zoom education, they don't learn anything and completely shut down and break down emotionally, socially, and academically. It's absolutely terrible and gut-wrenching to watch and hear. Please keep the buildings open for in-person learning. Please open the district for full 5 days a week in-person learning. Kara Kristoff from Downingtown Borough. COVID numbers keep rising in the area. Why did the secondary schools go back this week? Why aren't we all virtual? Christine Stiegel from West Bradford Township. I would like to share my thanks as a parent that we have moved to the hybrid schedule with regards to school. After just 1 day back, I can see positive changes in my 3 children, 2 of whom are at West and 1 at Marsh Creek. I don't necessarily love the setup, and I think there are ways we can improve, but I definitely feel that this is a step in the right direction. Studies and statistics are showing that schools are not where COVID is spreading, and I'm pleading with the members of the board to keep that information in mind as we move forward. Every family in this district deserves to have a choice when it comes to their children's education. Moving forward, eliminating the hybrid option takes away that choice. It has been repeatedly said that the district is going off the data and the recommendations made by the Chester County Health Department. In other words, these are not mandates. These are not have-tos. These are recommendations, and every one of you seated on our school board was elected to serve all families in our district. Moving backwards to a virtual school day is not serving all families. We've had months and months of uncertainties, decision reversals, lockdowns, and it is detrimental to our kids and putting an unnecessary burden on family after family. I believe the right decision was made to move to the hybrid option. Further, in talking to my children after they returned home yesterday and hearing that they were in classes with 4 or 5 other students, I implore those making decisions for our district to use common sense and make some changes going forward that allows for masks to be removed while seated at desks that are already 6 feet apart and room capacities that are not at all crowded. I appreciate and respect the need for masks in the hallways, in the cafeterias, and on the buses. In classrooms where there are currently 4 or 5 students sitting, there's absolutely no reason to keep a mask on for that entire time. It is past time for our school board to use common sense in the handling of this situation. So much thought is being put into mitigation efforts to control the virus, but it is being done at the expense of the academic, mental, and social and emotional health of our kids. Thank you for your time tonight. Sarah Roberts from West Bradford Township. Thank you so much for your work and dedication to returning the children to a successful hybrid model. The rigorous efforts of the district, the teachers, and the support staff all have made a positive and successful transition for my children at Bradford Heights Elementary School. I appreciate your continued work to maintaining the children as much as possible in the school environment and the teachers' dedication and sincere passion for the children they teach. Thank you for working the additional hours that coordination of these efforts entails throughout this pandemic. Patty Dungan from Easttown Township. I am writing to request reconsideration of the board's recommendation that there be no singing in chorus and theater in the district schools. While I do understand the reasoning behind such a policy, given the possibility of COVID-19 spread, I do not understand why indoor and outdoor sports are allowed while singing is not. I'm not at all against the idea of sports continuing in the schools. I'm just asking that music be given equal consideration. Sports are an outlet and a necessity for some kids. Music and singing is just as much an outlet and necessity for other kids who are not so sports oriented. Singing can be done with masks on. Indoor sports are not requiring masks during play. Singing can be done 6 feet apart in some areas. In most sports, the players are less than an arm's length away. Singing does require exhaling, however, it is not normally done without out of breath and panting during physical exertion when droplets and aerosols would likely travel farther. The CDC notes that indoor sports can also be super spreader events and provides various recommendations for safer ways to participate in sports. Similarly, there are ways, including limiting time, numbers, masking, location, and going outdoors, that singing can be made safer so kids can participate in music while keeping the kids and teachers at a low risk for exposure. Local community theaters have held live musicals and singing events since initial quarantine restrictions were lifted, with no coronavirus cases or spread. Other local schools have held live chorus activities without spread. Zoom singing and Zoom chorus compilations are somewhat lonely and are not the same as live singing, although I do appreciate the teachers' efforts in making these work, as I know these are not easy to parse together. There are a multitude of studies substantiating the positive mental benefits of music and singing can have on kids. Please give this some consideration for the kids who have music as their outlet. Mitchell Waller from Upper Euclid Township. Why are we sending the kids back now when cases are at their highest peak? Why did we not send them back in August when the cases were low? Had planning all summer to make this happen. Amy Marsico from Upper Euclid Township. Dr. Lenardi and members of the school board. DASD should be 100% virtual. The pandemic is reaching all-time highs every day. By remaining open, Downingtown is not keeping their students, teachers, staff, and families safe. Science should be trusted and followed. An article in the Daily Local yesterday states that open schools is a reason for the spread in our area. The article is titled, Looming COVID Crisis Feared in Chester and Delaware Counties. She provides a link. The few points for consideration. It is a known fact that children are spreaders of COVID-19 and often asymptomatic. We are not testing children in our district and don't know the percentage positivity of our schools every day. Last week, Chester County had an all-time high of positive COVID cases. However, less than 2% of the population was tested. We don't know the status of the other 98%, including children. The daily numbers this week of 11-9 are continuing to increase. We cannot assume the children are not spreading the disease without testing. Again, she provides another link. We are approaching flu and cold season. Why hasn't the district mandated or even highly recommended flu vaccines for those who choose to attend in person? The state of Massachusetts has made it mandatory. Again, she provides a link. Parents fighting for an in-person are also those who may not believe in science. Why are we putting our trust in their behavior? How can you confidently know if they are practicing social distancing, appropriately screening their children for symptoms and fever? How do you know that parents are not giving their children medication to mask their symptoms? Is in-person truly worth it? Given the current trend of positive cases and recent guideline changes, Downingtown should be virtual by Friday, 11/20. But why wait to choose when things get worse, instead of getting ahead of the problem and preserving the health of our community? Let's assume the district is open for 5 weeks. This would give students 9 to 10 in-person days. Was it worth it? 2 teachers have been forced into early retirement. Was it worth it? Very young children are experiencing disruptions. Was it worth it? Children have heavy backpacks. Was it worth it? Teachers are being asked to manage in-person and virtual students at the same time. Was it worth it? Parents have to flip care needs for their children given that ever-changing status of schools. Was it worth it? The list goes on and on. But answer me this, was it worth it? We decided to keep our children virtual 100%, even though we heard Dr. Lenardi state in-person students would be teachers' priority. Fortunately, we are advocating for our children and working with their teachers to ensure they get the education they deserve. Hybrid is not doing any favors to our children. Both in-person and virtual students are suffering since it's nearly impossible to ask of the teachers to focus on both groups well. And because of hybrid, virtual students are in front of their iPads for a longer period of time than when they were 100% virtual. I urge the district to take a stance and do what is in the best interest of your students, teachers, staff, and their families. We are entering the cold and flu season, and COVID-19 is expected to get a lot worse before it gets better. Vaccines and treatments aren't available and won't be for months, if at all. No one is clear on the long-term implications of the virus. Holiday season is approaching and families will be gathering. You cannot ignore the facts. I urge you to do what is right. Don't put our community's health and safety at risk. Jamie Bussa from West Bradford Township. Although limited, the return to school has been extremely beneficial to students from an academic, social, and emotional perspective. I ask that the board reconsider the criteria being used to keep us hybrid, such that more weight will be given to how schools are and aren't contributing to rising community numbers. The well-being of students needs to be prioritized, and we should do our best not to go back entirely virtual if we can safely avoid it. Also, I ask that you please do not continue to group sixth graders in with older students when dividing the student population. This is quite a formative year for sixth graders and should be acknowledged. Thank you. Lisa Strobridge from East Brandywine Township. We know that keeping teachers, staff, and students safe is your top priority. Please continue to consider moving back to virtual instruction while our local COVID incidents surge. The Chester County Health Department recently and without explanation changed the guidance from 2 to 3 weeks of cases with an incident rate of greater than 80 cases. This is not consistent with the goal of protecting our students, teachers, and staff. Please continue to prioritize safety and be the leaders that we need in our community. And that's it.
Here we go.
Thank you, Mrs. Lorhay. So the following policies are submitted for public review and scheduled for approval on December 9th. Is that the next? Okay. And you can see them listed down there. School board meetings. In accordance with Act 93 of 1998 Sunshine Law, the Board of School Directors met on the following dates in executive session to discuss items in one or more of the following areas: personnel, litigation, legal matters, confidential information, labor relations, school security, real estate, or land acquisition. October 19th, October 27th, November 4th, November 5th, November 11th. The next committee of the whole is scheduled for December 2nd, and the next regular school board meeting is scheduled for December 9th. Dr. Lenardi, the enrollment report.
Thank you, President Bertoni. As of November 2, 2020, we had 12,915 students. That is a decrease since October 1, 2020 of 1 student, and a decrease from November 1, 2019 of 174 students. That completes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Lenardi. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.